So, I guess we're gonna have to go back and revise our royal candidate selection episode, huh?
I.
Hello there, and welcome to the ReZero podcast. My name is Connor, and I'm going to be your prime host this evening. And I am joined by these two lovely gentlemen. Introduce yourselves as always.
Oh, hello there. I'm Wolf.
And I'm Connor. Gold.
And today we are going to be discussing Arc 8 finale of both Arc 8 and Arc 7, honestly. What is this, Phase 5?
Yeah.
And all of the story-changing massive events that come with it. So, no point in bearing the lead any further or any delays. We all know what this one's about, why we're here. Wolf, you gotta say it. What's happened?
Priscilla's gone. Priscilla's gone.
Full first, like, proper permadeath in this series of a main character. And it's insane just how impactful it is, like, immediately.
Before we talk about the emotions of the scene, I just have to say, in vindication for both of you, I am so angry that you were both spoiled. I cannot contain my anger and my hate. Not towards anyone in particular, but just my hatred towards the world. I want revenge against the world, just like Flop. I cannot believe you were both spoiled on this. I am so sorry. That is not okay.
One of us has to bite the bullet. So
That's insane.
It was a painful moment. One that propelled me forward and it lingered quite a bit because, when we do these episodes, it's nice to have something very fresh to talk about. But knowing in the back of my head that this is how the arc was going to end the entire time, before I even read Arc 7 fully, or Arc 8 fully, it colored a lot of the scenes differently.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it made the experience so much worse.
It is unfortunate timing, but you are cutting out, dude.
Oh,
It made the experience so much.
it's not like that it made the experiment particularly worse, but it irrevocably changed it.
Yeah, I completely agree. I was a little bit over halfway through Arc 8, probably just after Phase 2 when I got this spoiled. Honestly, it was like the day that the chapter released. It was everywhere, and I made it like a conscious effort to go into our group chats with all of us that run the channel and make a point, like saying, "Hey, stay off Twitter. Like, delete everything. Don't look. Like, massive spoilers. Like the biggest one you've ever seen. Just avoid it at all costs." And I got I got a wolf safe from it, and that's. He's seems kind of mad at me and very upset right now for being the only one that this is a surprise for. But like you said, Gold, it did paint the scenes differently. Every time it would cut back to her, there was like this feeling of dread about what's coming. And then when she makes her grand appearance, like you have to either think, is it already too late or is something even worse about to happen?
Yeah.
And it's quite the, thing to get spoiled on because I think for the most part, I, was avoiding most social media that had anything to do with ReZero at the time. And even though I did not click on any single message or tweet that had to involve it, it still somehow came through my home feed. And it just showed up and it was like Priscilla, blah, 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 blah. I was like, oh my God. And that was a real tragic moment because I thought I was free from any of the ReZero worms that kind of infect spoiler worms that kind of crawl its way inside of most of social media, but wasn't so.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Now,
uh,
go ahead.
I don't think that would irrevocably make this experience worse for either of you, but I cannot lie, if I was in both of yours position and that happened to me, I would be screaming with anger for at least an entire day.
There's a reason why I say that I get jump scared nowadays when I see a spoiler.
Or what were you like, throw your phone away?
It's more like I quickly scroll down and I'm like, ah!
Yeah.
And yeah, that's pretty much how I've been recently with spoilers.
This is, I mean, it's hard to get anything that's a bigger spoiler than this that is something there. The very fact that it exists tells you so much about where the story ends up compared to something like, oh, Subaru turns into a kid in Arc 7. Like, that's annoying to know, but it doesn't really change that much other than the surprise of one moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also it's like in this series, you can say fake spoilers all the time and make it seem like, oh, but it just happens in one loop. But like this one was very clear the way everyone was reacting to it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like there was no doubt in my mind that what happened, even though they didn't exactly say it. They were like, "Oh my god, my gorgeous princess, we'll always remember you." You know, and I was like, "Oh god damn it," you know. But yeah, that's how it happened.
Mine was just a comment in response to something else that was just, I can't believe it was Priscilla of all people. And then I scroll up a little bit and it was like mentioning a can't believe a character permanently died. So it was just two comments piecing it together.
Oh, pain.
Pain, indeed. But I will say that having had that spoiled, and then the time that we were still going through 7, and the whole time we were going through 8 for the podcast episodes, it's not like it's not set up or foreshadowed at all that this was going to come. This isn't out of nowhere. The entire premise of 7 and 8, for at least in my view, has been showing Subaru he can't always save everyone. And we've been talking since the beginning that there needed to be at least some lasting consequence for that. Someone that he isn't able to save and that has to sit with him.
This has been the sort of narrative thread that people have tugged on for a very long time with ReZero, which is the fact that none of the characters actually die, in a sense, right? Because of Subaru's checkpoint system, that it makes the stakes feel lackluster. And the moment that Teppei finally twists the knife and finally makes it so that, you know, a character fully dies, that is the moment that the series finally, kind of in a lot of people's eyes, finally legitimizes this premise, right? A lot of people for a very long time, you know, I mean, I think the Rem scene in which, you know, in season 1 versus season 2 into Rem, you know, losing her name and memories was like that for a lot of people. But the issue is that, yeah, the idea is that, like, oh, this series is very gritty and people die all the time. But the fact is, nobody actually dies because of Subaru's powers, right? And here it shows Teppei's willingness, and it's not a willingness in a callous sense, but a willingness to say that this character's character arc has served its purpose, or rather, her character arc being out of the series is worthwhile to other people's character arcs.
100%. It is. Because it's going to propel a whole new wave of grief and sense of failure, not only to Subaru, but to the most of the main camp. Because a huge portion of 7 and 8, well, particularly 7, were a lot of characters growing very close to Priscilla, or at least the members of her camp, and having to deal with that. Like Rem, Amelia, Schultz, Heinkel, Al, Subaru, Vincent, even, they're all going to be deeply, and Yorna, of course, deeply upset with this loss. And there's nothing Subaru can do about it this time.
It really hurts in a way I was never expecting for a character like Priscilla when I first met her. I think what makes it one of the most difficult scenes I've had to emotionally deal with in the series so far. I'm just getting emotional thinking about it now. I've never cried this hard in this series before, but I had like an actual feeling of grief when this happened. It was that effective. It was very effectively written too, mind you. Like the way it's led up, the way it's set up. It wasn't a surprise something was happening to me. It was a surprise of what happened, you know? Like,
Yeah.
I got an eerie feeling. And in fact, I should lead up with saying, while I was reading this entire phase itself, I had an eerie feeling that something was wrong. And I didn't know how to describe it. So when I finished the last chapter before this conclusion chapter, I was like, I don't feel satisfied. What's wrong? Something has gone wrong. Like, this doesn't feel right. This isn't... And I know Tappei isn't a bad writer, so what more is there that this conclusionary chapter could do to add that extra context I need to feel deeper about this? And he knocked it out the fucking ballpark, apparently.
Sure did. I remember reading and catching up to this chapter that there was a point where I'm thinking, okay, well, I thought Priscilla was supposed to die here, but everyone is safe and alive and all the villains are beaten. Does Arc 8 end with like a giant attack on everyone again? And then there's just this somber feeling as I slowly start to piece it together. Oh, the living ones are going to start fading away and Priscilla's still here. And to me, it was almost a relief that it happened that way and that it wasn't something like far more drastic and savage against them.
Yeah, it would be horrible if it was a very violent death, I would say. But it was very graceful. And at the same time, it is also just as tragic because you see her kind of just fade away. You know what I mean? Like, it feels like something is like just like Subaru and Al both kind of feel in this moment. You know, there's literally nothing that they can do physically to stop her from dying here. You know, it's true that like if both Al and Subaru just had a sudden attack on Priscilla, you know, Subaru said it himself. He's like, I'm going to kill myself until I can save you, pretty much. Like both of them would do that. They would do whatever they could. But because she's already been long dead, it's even more tragic because they're helpless.
Yeah. I think what makes it hurt even more is that Priscilla, being the amazing woman and very insightful woman she is, knows all of that already. And that the way she handles it is with such grace and empathy and understanding Ao and Subaru in a way that they have never been openly understood before. You know, Subaru's confessed to Akidna before, but that was a one-sided, malicious, like, understanding of what Subaru has gone through.
Yeah, that was a manipulation tactic, not empathy for it.
Priscilla just outright saying to both of them, you two have given more to these people around you than anyone could ever give. And you both carrying these heroic reveries is a beautiful and amazing thing, deserving of praise and love, was one of like the most beautiful lines of dialogue in the whole series for me.
It is, and it's a big highlight to like almost how much faith Priscilla has had in Al for one for the entire thing, even though she's made points of like, I don't necessarily trust him, but when I need something done, I can rely on him. And at this point, you can see that she did care for him still, regardless. And Subaru, who she would never been the most kind of a person to either, was... I don't know if it was necessarily an act the whole time with her, but at least here in the end, we can see past every guard that she has up, every mask that she wears, everything else, and just see the person that could see everyone else too.
Yeah.
And to have that almost validation for Subaru, I think is necessary for him going forward. Because if it had just been a point of they lost her off screen and there's nothing he could do about it, that's going to send him into a spiral. But with this, it can almost give him closure for it as it happens. He'll still grieve, obviously, but there's a point of almost not acceptance, but like he's been forgiven before he even starts blaming himself for it.
Yes. I mean, she points out throughout this epilogue chapter, you think your self-worth is very strange in how it comes about. And I really enjoy how her saying this means different things to both Ao and Subaru, but are both what they needed to hear the most in that moment, even if they're going to take it in different directions, which I'm very sure they will. I think for Subaru, this is going to be something he grieves about and something he thinks about, but it's going to be in a contemplative way that makes him develop as a person and a character, rather than a regressive way.
Yes, because this is the first time he can see someone doing what he has done from the beginning and letting this sacrifice of their own life mean something for everyone else to keep going forward.
And
whereas that's aside from like you could maybe consider what Reinhardt did against Regulus the same thing, but it's not exactly, because he just knows I'm going to stand right back up and nothing's going to change. Whereas up until now, that's been something that Subaru alone has experienced. And
he took that away from other people, opportunity to do that.
And so finally seeing it from the outside has got to be I think probably one of the most important moments in his character development. Like, it's Rem's from Zero Speech, obviously. The point where he can finally connect with Amelia, or not connect, like breaks up with Amelia as another big one. Bonding with Beatrice, and then overcoming Regulus, and then the You're Amazing Guy, Natsuki Subaru, and then we get this one. It's like another incredibly pivotal point in his character's journey.
It's I am so angry, but I am not angry because this is bad. I am angry because this is good. It's making me feel very raw emotions. Tapei has written this so beautifully, where I know Subaru, this is gonna affect Subaru and Ao so negatively in so many ways, but I know because of our theorized character journeys for both Ao and Subaru, I know this is going to take them in two different directions, and Subaru is going to come out of this, even if he's sadder because he's lost someone, on the other end, a wiser person. I don't know if I can say that for Ao, and because of my sympathy for him in this situation, that really hurts as well. It's like layered levels of grief and sympathy and empathy and pain, right?
Right, because Al's sacrifices have always been like short-term moments of pain in order to accomplish a goal, whereas Subaru's have been life-ending deaths that then set him back and make him have to focus all over again. And he's never had to, I mean, I kind of just said this, but see what this is like from the outside before, and let it stick. But now that he has, if he doesn't start to understand the way that other people would truly feel, because now that he can experience it too, of that sense of grief and loss at his own deaths, then like it's just a giant missed opportunity for that to go forward. I think it's going to raise his self-worth of himself and his empathy for others at the same time.
Yeah, it's that element of I don't think the stuff with him looping a lot on purpose, the way he has, is ever going to happen again.
Well, no, he's finally a fucking adult again.
Yeah,
for one.
But in that sense too, of like, I don't think he's ever going to resort to that. If he ever did, that would be a moment of him fully breaking down. That would not be Subaru in his right mind, you know. And obviously, before it's not been Subaru in the best mind either. But you know what I mean, right? Like,
yeah. It's not going to be his plan to deal with something going forward again.
Yeah.
We can hope.
And, you know, I think throughout this, like, I just want to say that, like, Priscilla's, you know, sacrifice here is very interesting, because, you know, we can speculate a bit about her character as a whole now, right? Now that it's kind of fun, you know, done and fine. like fine printed. This is the finality of this character.
Her character's set in stone.
Yeah. What is it that you thought about her? I guess now we can open up a little bit to one thing that I wanted to say. I'll put this out here first because I thought it was a very nice note at the end of it all, which is not only her speech, which is gorgeous, but the author's note at the end of the chapter. Tepe says, after going on for a long time, the Empire part is thus completed. Once the aftermath is dealt with in the Valakian Empire, the story will return to the Kingdom of Lagunica. Nazi Subaru and everyone else will now go on to face a new conflict, leaving behind the woman who passed on in that land. I always wanted to write about her. To that extent, she truly was a person as radiant as a flame. Thank you for everything until now, Priscilla.
Oh.
And that just shows his level of respect for his characters,
Yeah. Making me cry.
Yeah.
All right. It's a big moment.
And, I think one of the gorgeous things about her character is how, her confidence, whether it was a mask or not, doesn't really matter. Because her assessment and appraisements were always for the benefit of everybody around her. I think there was not a single real callous bone in her body. You know what I mean?
No.
You see her acting cruel. It always was for the benefit of the people that she was cruel to, in a sense. Give them ample motivation in very frank terms. It was a very honest form of love. If Yorna's love was this deep, smothering, motherly love, her love was a very honest, unfiltered, sure type of love. She wouldn't see the world in the fake ways that people believe it, and she didn't want to control everybody around her. I think the contrast between her and Sphinx's desires kind of give you a good insight into why their conflict matters so much. Sphinx is all about grasping onto an identity that isn't hers for the sake of controlling the world that seemed to have wronged her. Priscilla took an identity that might not have been who she actually is. I mean, she's not Priscilla Burial, and she embodied that for the sake of spreading love and, passion to everybody around her. And I think that her loss, as Tepe says, is like a extinguishing of a very bright flame in the story. I always thought that her contrast with Amelia was very important. Seeing her go in this way in the story is very sad because of that reason. We think about all the things that she could have inspired in the characters around her, all the growth that she still had to go for. We could have figured out truly what her actual feelings were. We could have figured out exactly what she desired to in a country that she ruled, and what she truly cared for the people around her. But I think there's beauty in the fact that we'll never know, and we can only assume. Because in real life, we never get those definitive answers all the time. I think this is one of the gorgeous forms of storytelling that has been laid out here, which is that people change through their interactions with others. You see it in all of Subaru's loops. You see it time and time again throughout the story. And I think that the changes that Priscilla still had, we'll never get to appreciate, but we can appreciate who she was in the story in the little bit that she was able to impart her wisdom into every character around her. And that's why I've always loved her character. And it makes me very sad to see her go.
It's really well said, Gold.
Yeah. I feel like we're at the eulogy right now.
I had not been as strong of a Priscilla stan until basically I had finished Arc 7 and got to see her fighting side by side with Yorna, and then going into 8, around when we were starting the podcast and just letting her build up to be this better and better character in my mind. Where by the end, I felt that while you're saying we might not ever truly get to know what she wants and like what she would have done, I feel that was never hidden from us. It was just hard to realize that it's what she's been saying the whole time. The world always works to her benefit. It's a core, not just saying of her, but it's like her core mindset that everything in the world will work out. Like, in another way to say it, it's that everything's going to work out in the end. Kind of harkening back to what Subaru's mom said from the very beginning. Like, it doesn't matter how it starts, what happens in the middle. What matters is how it ends. And Priscilla has always had this confidence to her, like with her interactions with Liliana, that I can't keep you to myself. You belong to the whole world, and if the whole world belongs to me, then it's benefiting it as well. Which seems like this weirdly backwards, selfish view of it, but in reality, it's someone that has none of the issues that Subaru fights with, of this like feeling of self-doubt, no self-worth, feeling like what he does isn't enough and that he can't make a difference to anyone else, that all he can do is try to help other people achieve what they can do. And Priscilla takes that to be, I am worth it. Everything is going to work out no matter how hard it is right in front of me. I have everything I need to keep going, and the people around me who rely on me are those that I can do nothing but inspire to be better and let them make me happy when they can. And that's almost as if she is this glowing flame. It's this light in the dark that you never have to really worry about what it's hiding, because it's fully illuminated. You can see everything inside, and it's just showing the light on everything else around her. That she is this beacon of inspiration to other people, wanting them to see that the world works in their favor too, if they're willing to look at it in that perspective. And that all she really wants is for other people to see that too.
It's such a beautiful way to look at the world, and something if she was a real person, I would really respect, right? Like, if I saw that in another person. I think what makes this even harder for me is when I was reading it and knowing something was wrong, when Priscilla came and broke through everything, I was like, this feels like a Deus Ex Machina. How did this happen? You know, she's come here to save the day. Oh my god, her stuff is so OP. You know, like, how is that going to be balanced in the story going forward? And then subconsciously, I think I knew then, you know?
That something had gone wrong.
Yeah, something had gone wrong. And it didn't really hit me until I'm reading this chapter of them walking together and essentially saying goodbye to everyone, with Priscilla hiding it very well from Subaru. And the way in which she has set this situation up so that everyone she's affected and loved isn't alone is just so full of love and empathy that it's so hard to describe. Like Vincent with Medium and Flop, you know? I think out of everyone that's going to be affected the most by this, of Vincent and Al, Vincent is going to come out better, even though maybe he's going to have that initial burst of anger be higher, because his whole thing was sacrificing everything for her, and she's gone and taken his big brother role from him, you know?
There's that, but he's kind of already gotten over that feeling when it happened with Chisha, that Subaru was able to talk him out of it.
Yeah.
So I think Vincent's in a better mental place, and it wouldn't have shocked me if he already knew that was
deep down
what had happened with Priscilla.
Yeah.
I think, I think it's still there at the core of his being, though. It's not something that can change very easily. Even in this batch of chapters, there's the moment where he considered killing himself just so that Priscilla could take on that full Yang sword and fully win the selection, but Medium stopped him. And I think that kind of goes to show how much he still thinks about her, himself in comparison to her, I mean.
Yeah. And I think him maybe somewhat deep down knowing something is wrong explains his attitude towards her when they're talking in this epilogue chapter, and he's very dismissive of her in a way of like, I don't want to talk to you right now. You've annoyed me, right? And at first, I didn't understand why that was, but now it makes a lot of sense. I'm like, I'm frustrated with the decisions you made. Of course, I love you, but you've made me mad, you know?
Yeah, it's classic Vincent for it.
Yeah. And
go ahead.
Just the way this is set up at the end here with Subaru singing Liliana's song, it's a perfect callback to Arc 5 for this. And her and Al dancing until the sun comes up, basically.
Pretty much.
Yeah. It's just such a beautiful moment that I think will live like rent-free in my head forever. Especially because in that moment, when all of that happens, I then knew that Priscilla knew how much this was going to hurt, especially Al, and that's why she wanted Subaru to be there with him. Especially because Al and Subaru share this aspect of being a foreigner, right? Of being alone always in some small way in this strange land to them.
And that they're going to be the only ones who can understand what the other one feels, even if Subaru isn't aware of that.
Yeah.
For Al.
Which was probably another thing that's just dropped on his lap with what Priscilla says. Priscilla outright knowing that these are authorities and that the pain they have gone through is so like onto a level that you can't understand, that she respects, it was such a interesting way to have this deep character emotional thing between these two come to light. I think this is the best way it could have been done, without a doubt.
And it's also very, sad because the two of them now harbor an inseparable bond. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They've always known it, but I feel like both of them have tried very hard to say, okay, you're on your lane, I'm on my lane. Our lanes may intersect every once in a while, but that's fine. We're okay with that. I trust you somewhat. But now it's more than that. It's like, imagine if both of you now know the ugliness inside of each other's hearts. You both understand that you are powerless in the same ways. It kind of shows the strength, and you might be saying, why would I only talk about the weakness at this moment? It's because I know that's the way that both of them are going to feel subtly about it. You know what I mean? One obviously stronger than the other. I think Al here stronger than Subaru will feel that, but it feels like a failing on their parts, and only they know the extent of their failure.
Yeah. And that's the tragedy of this situation, and the lesson I think Priscilla is trying to teach her in all her wisdom, even though this is how things ended up, right? At the end of the day, this happening is not their fault. Because something wrong happens, because they can't fix it, does not mean they are guilty of something, or criminals, or are the greatest sinners to ever exist. Them putting that burden on themselves is causing them needless pain. It's okay to try and save everyone around you, but if you can't save them, that is okay too, because she knows better than anyone that them two have tried their best for that, right? Like, you can never claim, I think, very authentically, that Subaru or Al have not tried their best, right? In their own ways. Obviously, Al has a very different view to this sort of thing to Subaru, but even in his own way, Al was always trying his best.
Yeah, I think one of the things about this that is very interesting is the fact that Priscilla always had ownership over the world in a sense that they both feel very acutely. And that's the reason why they both resonate so strongly with her, especially towards the end, was even Subaru, right? Is this idea that, the world is all varying stages of good and bad, and they've all seen the spectrum of it fully. And they all take similar ownership of what it means to live in this world, and also to appreciate that, the bad must temper the good, because flames, like the flames that Priscilla creates can create, but they can also, burn. I think like there is a lot here that they kind of have to remember, which is they can't experience the feeling that she's feeling right now. It's a distance that they'll never be able to close so long as they have authorities, which is the fact that in her own death, she doesn't even agonize or regret or think about what she could have done better. She leaves them with the most that she can impart into the world and then moves on, just like anybody else naturally would. But these two are cursed never to feel that completion. You know what I mean?
Like that freedom almost of death.
Yeah. And I think when somebody else that they care about experiences it, I wonder what it'll do to them,
That imparts, like, now I remember in the previous phase when Priscilla mentions that everyone is a slave to something, right?
Right.
Now I realize that I think she's almost meaning by this in a very thematic way is that, everyone is a slave to something, but when someone normal dies, they are no longer a slave. They are free, right? They're free to rest. And
Yeah.
very pointedly, Subaru and Al are not.
And when you think about it, this entire theme of this arc has been the undead being alive.
Yes.
In a way, Subaru and Al are the same blasphemers that, are around them then. You know what I mean? And it's interesting to feel that, like, everybody around them are contempting the dead, where they know that they too are making a mockery out of the concept. I think this arc is supposed to show that even if you are immortal, even if you are trying to live, your legacy doesn't mean anything. Like, think about even Rowan in this arc, like all these people who try to make this huge legacy moment. All of it is meaningless unless you truly do acts that inspire the world to remember you. You could live for as long as you want. You could have the name of the Witch of Greed. It doesn't really matter so long as your life is filled with meaninglessness. And also, when you think about it, Al's authority is sort of like that too. He has the perception of what he's doing in the moment, and he's going to solve it no matter what. But the moment afterwards will always be set in stone. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter if he survives an attack that would kill him guaranteed no matter what, so long as after it's done, somebody says, "Wow, you're an asshole." You know what I mean? Like, there's really nothing, like, he can expect them to praise him, but then when they say you're an asshole, that'll always be set in stone. And that's the nature of this arc, I think, is what your legacy means and what does it mean to live a full life.
Yeah, to truly be immortal, to truly be remembered, is to be someone that loves and to spread love, because love is not a finite resource, and people will feel that forever, right? I think that's also pointed as to why maybe Flugel has kind of disappeared from the history books a little, and he's not as prominent a figure as, like, because, like, the confusion between the Sage Shawler and the Sage Flugel, right? Like, that being a thing of, oh, so it was all Flugel, and not people not knowing that. I think that's another aspect of it. Flugel's a cruel man, from what we understand, right?
As far as we've seen.
Yeah. And
yeah, he told this to Shala, and
yeah. And all of these cruel people that we have met so far, the only times that we have seen people been truly affected by them is either by love or by hate. But hate is a self-destructive feeling that can lead to disaster, which I think is what Sphinx's whole tie-up is, right? That even though her hatred made her her, it wasn't a feeling that brought about a positive life for her.
Right.
The wrong conclusion, you could say. Which is why when Subaru, and also as you mentioned before, of Subaru and Al being Walking Dead men is well gold. Is why when Subaru is talking to Sphinx and empathizing with her, I think that feels so raw too, right? Like, him coming to understand that is a very wise thing. And it's a showing of Subaru's growth as a person really well. Because Rowan, as we mentioned before, you know, he's someone that fought and gave up literally everything in his life for this one innate concept that he probably would never have reached, right? And how different would his life have been if he had all those children and loved them? You know, Cecilus being born still would have probably happened, you know? Regardless of what Cecilus feels about it, if he was someone who was loved, his life would have been better, you know?
Probably. He is also kind of a psychopath.
He is, yes, but still.
Well, when you think about that moment, right, in which Cecilus kills his father, and then Al's like, "Why do you feel nothing about this?" It's all in Rowan's doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that moment encapsulates exactly what we're talking about now, which is the fact that it doesn't really matter what you think your ambitions or your fate is. What really matters is what you do to get to that place. And that's actually a very interesting, theme of this arc as well, which is the fact that all of them discuss, even arc 7, this idea that we have to do this fight well. We have to do this fight without people dying. We have to do this fight in the way that is best, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Vincent initially was saying, as long as everything comes to a good conclusion, it doesn't really matter what happens, right? As long as we win.
Yeah.
And I think that sort of thought process kind of comes into play in which somebody like Rowan takes that to the very extreme and then lives a life ultimately meaningless. Like, even his son doesn't even care that he challenged him to fight. It really doesn't matter. Never saw the extent of the sword. He never did anything. And it comes down to the message in this arc is that there is a definite nuance in what it means to choose in your life, which is the fact that even if you're somebody like Al who can redo fate a million times to get the choice that you desire the most, completely right, your choice isn't necessarily better than somebody who wings it on the fly. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Because their life has equal value to yours.
Yeah, because at that moment, when Priscilla breaks out of the mirror and stuff, and she decides to kill herself to be resurrected, and all that, she's choosing a fate, a heroic ideal, stronger than that of somebody that planned it out. It's passion, it's life, it's truth. I think that is the thing that people can always overlook, which is the fact that she tried her best. People will try their best and sometimes they'll fail, and that is all right. But as long as they try their best, then that is what is truly honorable.
It is. And like what she's done here in all of her actions for all of it is nothing short of admirable for everyone around her. And it's going to stick with it all for a long time. Like, this is in stepping away from the characters, this is just going to make the story different.
Yeah.
Like for a while.
Yeah.
It's going to change like the stakes for one. Like it's put it on the table. Now we've had like the big first one that anyone else, not anyone else, but a lot of characters are now less plot safe, let's say, than they would have been otherwise.
And when you really think about it, there's no, this might be hyperbole, but this is probably one of the biggest moments in the series.
Yes, it is.
Top 3, at least, I think.
Top 3, yes.
Yeah. And what it means for the rest of the series at large isn't just, good thing to, like, in a lesser story, this would be, wow, Jappé finally learned to kill somebody off. This is a masterstroke of writing that has been set up throughout the past 2 arcs at the very least, and is so impactful in a way in which the entire story is colored from this moment onwards due to this one event, which not only has so much plot significance, but also has so much thematic significance that feels resonant. Like, it'd be one thing to do this and people would be like, that's lame. I thought Priscilla had this or that left to answer, right? But this ending makes you feel like, even if she did, that's the point.
It's the
point
tragedy of
is,
dying.
yes.
Yes.
The point is that death is never going to be a clean storybook moment where you feel like, oh, yeah, the character felt like they had everything go, left and whatever. Like, there was, they made at peace with themselves and then died. And Priscilla did so in a way, but she lived her entire life that way,
Yes, she did. She was never in conflict with her own heart.
It's the true writer's stroke of genius when it comes to writing character deaths, where the loss of them in the future, not just of the story, but if this was a real place, is felt so deeply, and the loss of that potential evokes such raw feelings in you and the characters around them. That is how you write a impactful character death. That's like textbook right there.
And it's one of the most impactful deaths I've read. Yeah. I don't know about you guys.
I was devastated. I'm going to be honest, I have not cried this much when it comes to ReZero. Like, I've had emotional tear-up moments with ReZero before, I have not, bawled my eyes out like this before with this series. It impacted me that deeply. Simultaneously having this impactful death and having Priscilla acknowledge Ao and Subaru in the way she did with that level of empathy, I think it overwhelmed me with emotion.
It's also really rare for people, to express themselves that way. I think this was her purely as herself, you know what I mean, in the last moments. And I think it shows the quality of the character that, we all come to love. And yeah, it's just that how keen she is. She understands the danger here in her death.
Mm-hmm.
But she also feels like it was so very necessary, And that's how I feel about it. Like, I as a reader, can feel the tragedy of her passing.
Yes.
But I can also feel the necessity of it. It's like when you have to, burn something in order for the fertile soil below to grow new fruit, I think that is the feeling that I have with her character and her death here, in which I feel like if she didn't die, which isn't necessarily saying that if she didn't die, the story would be awful. I would say that the idea for her to die here is so important in facilitating what the story can become. Because from here on out, I feel like the meaning behind the sacrifices, the meaning behind the characters' goals and ideals that they strive for and, agonize over will be just that much more raw.
Yes.
It'll feel like they're in a precarious balance at all times. Not only for us, the reader, but for them, right? And I think this is actually an interesting point, because you might be saying, oh, well, then should Tepe have killed characters earlier on? No, I think this is the perfect time to do it. And I'll tell you why. Because beforehand, we didn't love the world. We didn't love the characters if he had killed them in arc 3 or arc 4 or whatever, right? But now that we love all these characters and the world that they inhabit and what their relationships mean to everybody around them, we now know that if any one of them dies, it will be a heart-wrenching experience.
Yeah, because Priscilla has been a big character for a while, but it isn't as if she was the most impactful and important character in the whole series or anything, right? Like, this isn't Amelia dying or Garfield dying or Ram or anyone that has had as much of an emotional impact on Subaru. Like, he's talked with her 3 times before
Oh yeah, no.
she
Subaru
passes
doesn't
here.
really. Yeah.
I think it adds. It's also the element too, right, of her loving the world and thinking of the world as this most beautiful and magnificent thing, despite all its flaws and tragedy. It's that extra element of, like, she's almost like the tour guide for Al and Subaru of, I know you're foreigners, welcome to this beautiful and amazing world that we live in that is mine, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, like, the garden that is this world is beautiful as it is tragic. And, you know, it's almost, when the audience and Subaru are on the same level of understanding of her, that is when it's her time to go, because that's the lesson she can teach in terms of, like, a thematic perspective of the story, right?
You're very right. I think you bring a great point, which is that she was the gardener in this world that is the garden that we have all been kind of inducted into. We see all the beautiful parts of the world and all the horrible parts of it. And she says, you now sufficiently understand everything that I love about this world. I leave it all to you, is pretty much what she's saying at the end. And she's saying that to them, but also to the audience in a way.
Yes, exactly. Because it's, and you know that she is speaking to the audience, I think, throughout this chapter in particular, because there's one moment where she's talking to Anastasia and Amelia, and she jokes that, oh, this is quite a poorly penned story, you know, a half-elf, a greedy merchant, and a sun princess vying for the throne. Sounds like a poorly written tale. And Subaru is off complaining, like, hey, that we are having no irony with this, thank you very much. But I think that's, it's like, it's almost as if the character of Priscilla can see the hand of the author of To Pay, and she's, like, clasping it firmly and like, pointing the camera almost to herself and saying, you know, your world is just as beautiful and tragic as mine is, but that doesn't stop it from being the beautiful garden that it is. Live your life, right?
Right.
You get one life, like Subaru always says, you get one life. Live it to the fullest and have no regrets like me, because someone who lives their life in regret becomes like a lot of these undead people in this arc, right? They all had regrets. It was the regrets and misgivings of the dead that brought them back. And a lot of them get very meaningful conclusions to their life in this story. Like Balleroy, for instance, right? The way his character ended was so perfect for me of, not only does this encapsulate what I know about this man, it feels like to him, it's him finally being free. You know, like, he doesn't have to hang on to this hatred for Reinhard and his desperation for revenge. Madeline, Medium, Flop, the people that he's loved, Serena, Miles, who he hopes he can now see again, you know? Like, it's a tragic and hard and difficult world, but it's so beautiful in spite of that and because of that. Deep shit.
It is. And I mean, I hate to, like, just cut it, but there's only so much we can say. Priscilla has left a lasting impact on us all and on the story too. It's, as you said, one of the most pivotal moments so far, probably will remain to be that way for a long, long time. And at this point, all we can do is send her off. It's been amazing, Priscilla.
Thank you, Priscilla.
Yeah, you
remain a shining sun for all who come after.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, but we'll make sure to put her off of our tier list.
I mean,
she's gonna have
if Teresia can be on the tier list,
joking.
Priscilla can be on the tier list.
I'm joking.
Priscilla gets her own tier. She's the sun. She has to loom us above us all, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But apart from that,
yeah,
Olbart doesn't have any arms.
Oh yeah, we can start with that. Olbart has been fully disarmed. Cannot fix Subaru. Oh well.
Yeah. Get Rip Bozo.
Rip Bozo. You know, he lived his life full of deceit and a cruel ambition, and this is what he got. So
yeah, exactly.
All
I like
the
I think
woes
at the
that-
end, yeah, go ahead.
I like it was also almost like a passing mention, just like a random line backwards, like, oh, I don't even have 2 arms anymore, so I won't be able to help you. Sorry.
Yeah, I think one of the funniest parts about that is that he was lightly inspired by the battles that went on around him, right? And then he was like, "Oh, I'm an old man. You guys are looking down on me." And then he just gets owned, and I appreciate that. I think that was deserved. You know,
I think that's
Mhm.
Tepei's big statement on what the traditional, gerontocracy of the world needs to learn. It's a lesson they need to learn. You are fallible. Just because
Yeah.
you've lived life and you have different experiences and different wisdom doesn't make you a better person than anyone else.
Nope. Sometimes it just makes you worse. And like the least interesting of the divine generals.
Yep.
Get fucked, old Bart.
Yeah. Fuck you,
Yeah.
Obart. Rip
I
Bozo.
agree. Let's see. What else do we want to talk about real quick?
We can move on to just a lighter topic. Why the fuck was Palladio in this like arc or phase at all? Like,
don't
what
know.
purpose did this serve?
I guess it's to put an end on all of Priscilla's past rivals.
Yeah, but
You
he
know what I
doesn't
mean?
even interact with anyone aside from like 2 lines of dialogue with Sphinx. It's just after like almost the near perfection of her demise. Just having him here randomly feels like weird.
I don't get it either, but it's. I'm sure the Evil Eye Tribe will become important eventually.
Rip
Sure.
Bozo.
Rip
Exactly.
Bozo. There's a lot of Rip Bozos in this. Arc.
There is, yeah.
Rowan get the Rip Bozo.
Yeah, fuck that guy.
Yeah. I mean, I really liked the scenes with Cecilis and Al.
Yes.
I thought that was really interesting.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
I mean, obviously, like when Sphinx is like trying to figure out what's going, because like there's a very interesting part about this arc in Sphinx's perspective, which is everything that I could possibly plan for is being warped in some way that is just impossible. I think that's a very fun part about this arc, is that it feels like, yeah, people are defying fate. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And all of them, all these exceptional individuals are here all at once. And they're all doing their own unique, impressive, impossible thing. And I think that is all that could be done to stop something of this caliber. It's exactly like the few plans that, like she planned like 5 layers deep, right? And still, one by one, all of her 5 layers of the plans were foiled.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And it's interesting to think about, like, okay, so if I have this huge summoning circle that's spread throughout the Moose Bull, right? When Moose Bull is dead, then Priscilla will still despair, so it's fine, right? Because they have to kill Archaea, so I win in the end anyways. All right, that doesn't happen. All right, I'm being fought by these people. I'm going to bring down a star. There's no way they could avoid this attack. Oh, you just made your.
They have 2 ways of avoiding the attack, apparently.
Yeah. You made your dream come into reality, and also you can just destroy me, right? Okay, great. So now I'm gonna do summoning circle. All 5 of my clones have to be in the same points and do the summoning circle at once, right? This huge circle. One of my guys are occupied right now by Amelia, right? And it's just a series of unfortunate failures. Which is to say, the theme that I was talking about earlier, which is the fact that she planned this to the utmost degree, and because she is a miserable person who is only motivated by some identity of somebody that she's not, and a legacy that's never hers to claim, did it end up like this? Like, she's smart, but what she did here was evoke, the people that are able to oppose the fate that she believes is so certain.
Yeah. It's
Well, because Sphinx's whole existence was a incomplete certainty of why she came about. She's always known what her original purpose was, like why she was here, and so it's almost a defining part of her character. She speaks in like very rigid, almost computer-like methods. It's just like, this is what it is. I need to
Confirmation.
reevaluate, confirm, explain. Like it's a black and white, yes, no, 0 and 1 machine view. So when she knows like this is what is supposed to come and does everything she can to deal with it, and that is then like taken out almost out of spite of everyone fighting in an effort to go against it.
Yeah, I agree. Another thing that I noticed is kind of digression. There's a character who speaks exactly like Sphinx in the story. Does anybody else knows who it is?
Are you meaning Klein?
Yeah, you're not gonna like the answer. It's Klein.
Ew.
And I was thinking about that. I was like, are they both clones like that?
I think that just feeds further to my theory of he's like an empty vessel.
Yes.
After Hector got his soul ripped out somehow.
Or he's like a distorted ode of Hector of some sort.
I mean, maybe. My theory has been that the sanctuary goes up. Hector must have been a half-breed of some kind, which is why they designed it that way. He got pushed out and his soul got kicked out of his body.
Mm-hmm.
Like what they were warning would happen to Amelia if she crossed the border.
Yeah, and that's been a foreshadowing setup for, later story stuff, right?
Yeah, so he ends up as just this empty vessel. Like, obviously, we never see him in the sanctuary, even in the arc where he's introduced. And so that's just been my expectation. That it's a similar thing where Sphinx was empty.
Yes. Sphinx, yeah. And the other thing is, right, the empty vessel thing. Another interaction I thought was curious about that is when Sphinx looks at Amelia and calls her the Witch of Envy. Mm-hmm. And then she's like, no, I'm just Amelia, duh. And then she's like, oh yeah, I guess you are just Amelia. But it's the same thing in a way. I believe there's acknowledgement that is exactly the Witch of Envy's body. Does anybody else feel that way?
I went the opposite, that after the second look, she realized that it wasn't the Witch of Envy. Like, it's like, oh, no, you just look similar.
I think it was, what I mean by that is that she believes herself to be the Witch of Greed, right? But the truth is that she was like, oh, we're both the same, but you decide not to be who you were modeled after.
Yes.
Is the way that I took it.
Yeah, that's the way I took it too, of it's she, again, same ode as Satella, like same blueprint, but obviously different element because different soul, different individual, right? Like it's that kind of thing of saying again and again, your fate is not decided for you. You decide it for yourself. Amelia doesn't have to be Amelia. Amelia could be this Witch of Envy. And the story all along has been she could have given into all of this hatred that's been thrown at her and been this negative, hateful devil that everyone wants her to be, right? The self-fulfilling prophecy. But she isn't. Amelia is a wonderful, beautiful silver light upon this world. She spreads so much love and amazing, like just wholesome sweetness that this world so desperately needs. And she is rejecting all of that placed upon her. And I think that's also why she's Subaru's, like, number one.
Yes.
I don't think he has a number one specifically.
No.
Well, we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, I meant, like, as an example, like, why he fell in love with her, why she's been so important to his story.
Some supporting evidence to what I was thinking is the fact that when... This is just my opinion now, right? We're getting into this, right? I think that them being similar makes sense because if Akidna sends Puck to be her guardian, it means that Akidna knows that a clone of the Witch of Envy should be looked over by her own experiment because she is the person who made her in the first place. You get what I'm saying?
Maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I like it's stuff like that because in this point, one thing that I want to, because I think I said this last reading, but I'm going to say it again. What is wrong with her? she's done so much that at this point I'm like, what isn't a part of her scheme? What isn't a part of her plan?
She's getting tried at The Hague, like these war crimes are uncountable at this point.
Talking about that Al, right? I mean, very much confirmed this time around. But he has a hatred towards her.
Yes.
Which is very interesting.
A hatred, but he also calls her teacher.
Sensei. Same thing that Roswell says.
He also, despite being an earth magic user, funnily enough, does a certain spell we haven't heard of before called Ol Shamak.
Yep.
Interesting that, and oh wait, it's the same as the seal on Satella. Quite interesting, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, strange that.
It's almost as if our theory is probably 100% correct. Hello, Frugal. Nice to see you.
A witch healing spell. Yes, that was taught to me by my master. Interesting.
Interesting that. Oh, I wonder why he would hate her. Oh, maybe stuff like this is why.
Perhaps. Who knows? Something happened.
When you think about it like that, it's like maybe Al was the perfect soldier, created specifically to trap the other witches' souls and house them. You know what I mean? Yes.
I think if Akidna had a hand in designing this body for Al, like the ode and everything that goes with it, it would make sense as to why he's angry at her too, because she made him a follower, right? She made him Aldebaran.
Yeah, I mean, she definitely imparted the name onto him.
Which is not what he wanted, clearly, right?
Yeah, and she knows very keenly exactly what it means to bestow star names upon people in this world. It's a cruelty. It's also the same sort of cruelty that she displays when doing stuff with Beatrice, you know?
Yes.
It's one of those curiosity things that she plays with. And I think that sort of measure of it is exactly why I believe that she's orchestrated so much of things in the series, is because what things won't she do in the name of curiosity, you know? But also, it does feel like there's a part of it that always makes me curious, which is how much of this is distinctly for herself and how much is this for somebody else or for an end, you know what I mean? Like, maybe it's to resurrect inscription.
I'm so sorry. You cut out for me for like the past 30 seconds.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, it makes you wonder, like, what she's doing it for, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Because if she really needed a body for this long, she's gotten it. She just had to hop inside of one of the...
Oh no! He's being censored by a kid.
The vessels of Sphinx or whatever.
One of the vessels of Sphinx, is that what you're trying to say?
Yes, one of the vessels of Sphinx, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And now I'm wondering, like, what is she doing all of this manipulation for?
It's a good question. It really ties into that she has been like trying to set herself up for something bigger. And that's like permeated through the entire story too. Like it all, like we kind of joked about it last time, but it does all come back to Akidna.
It does.
Yeah. It also makes you wonder what comes back to Akidna, what comes back to Pandora, because the witch cultist, their goal, and I've said this before, and I feel it more acutely time after time again, which is, yeah, sure, Pandora might be the main boss of the series at all, like the sinister implications of what she did to Amelia and whatnot, and her parents, all that stuff. Is like, apologize to my parents, right? Or apologize to her parents, says Fortuna. But also, like, what she's doing, what she wants, has to be at least somewhat comparable or at least opposed to what Akidna wants. And this is just an inference that I've always had, which is that Hector was also working with Pandora. That might be unfounded, but it also seems like I don't know. They're both mysterious and erased from history, so I don't. It's one of those things.
Right.
It's like a schism of witches and warlocks, almost like two different kind of ultimate paths that some of them chose to go down.
Yeah, and they're both the erased sins from history. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of makes me wonder if what Akidna's doing is to stop them. You know what I mean?
Perhaps.
But at the same time, we'll never be able to know because it's so vague at this point.
Yeah. This is a thing that's going to be revealed, like, last stretch of the story.
I think, okay, this is something I want to say too. Because one of the candidates to the throne bowed out, my real theory is that the candidacy is going to end before the series ends.
Yes. Yeah.
As in, like, arc 10 or arc 11, we're going to know who wins.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I think so too.
No, I would agree.
If there is a winner, I don't think it's out of the question for this to drive the kingdom to the state that we see it in Amelia's future, and that there just is no king of Lagunica anymore.
Well, you see the ruin in her future, and we've seen in this arc that the future like lines that Amelia saw, that Akidna purposefully fed her, were the worst visions of the future. I think are ones that are going to all come to be said.
I think we've gotten a couple at this point. I'm not positive. I know we've gotten Julius's.
We've gotten Julius's. We
just got Priscilla's right
gotten
now.
Ram's one in 6 as well.
Mm-hmm.
See, I win again. She said it.
It was me.
So we'll just have to. I mean, it is true that most of them are going to come true. It'd be weird setup otherwise. But for like Akidna's whole plan, at least for this side of it, does seem entirely. I mean, not seem like we know that this whole thing was Sphinx's plan for all of it. But I mean, the only thing we know for Akidna's main motivations is she wants to live and to know and learn everything eventually. Right. But even that seems like it stopped being true because at some point she does. It feels like she sacrifices herself and like lets herself die to the witch cult, or at least to Hector, or whatever comes after that.
And she chooses to become mother instead, right?
We think. I mean, it's all like, what was a lie? What was the truth? What is like Betty's interpretations of the memories?
What a different perspective of what was going on. Yeah.
The only thing that we can really confirm here is that Al had a bad experience with her. We can assume 400 years ago, and probably before she made Beatrice.
Yes.
Because otherwise, someone would recognize who he was if he had gone to the graveyard. Like Roswell would have more information.
Well, the fairy's disfigured now and wearing a helmet. Maybe he wasn't always like that. Who knows? I think like there's part of me that wants to believe that this desire of hers to be with Subaru was predilected on the things with Al.
I think so.
Yeah,
like a similar desire for like an infinite amount of
and I think that she
understanding.
Tortured Al to a point in which his brain worked so good until he lost his memories in quotes, right?
If he ever had them in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And it comes to the point where, that's the reason why he's so willing to do this, because he was trained this way, you know?
That's his way of understanding how his ability is supposed to work because it's been colored by his experience with Akidna.
Right. And also, it's interesting because it's exactly as I said, which is the fact that he can believe something to be the case, but until he sees it, he can't even override the results of his actions. All he can do is do the action until he feels satisfied, complete it, and then say, okay, how do you react, right? And for somebody like Akidna, that's probably lame. She's like, oh, I was just wrong. I'll never know what happened if I tried something else, you know?
Yeah, Al does it till it works, basically.
Yeah, he like she'll never be able to see, what if you did this instead, right? And
Yeah, have you tried this way or have you attempted this one? But still, the way he uses it isn't too dissimilar from that. Uh, it's just on a smaller scale.
Yes, exactly.
Because it's like, have you tried doing this in this instant, or have you tried doing this in this instant? Because he takes 1,000 different approaches to convince Priscilla not to come to Wallachia.
yes.
So it's still that similar greed if way of handling the situations. It's just so ingrained to him. That's how it works, that he walks around with a sword to his throat when he's prepared to just look at every scenario.
He immediately, when this is happening to Priscilla, goes to Subaru, bro, kill yourself, basically. Fix this, right? Again and again, putting pressure on Subaru, you know?
Yeah.
It's not that, you know, our abilities are different. Yours is stronger if you use my methods, right? I think that there's almost an envy there of Al, like, what if I had yours, right? What if we switched?
Yeah.
Well, and we've seen that a lot through Arc 8 as well, or 7, and mostly late second half of 7, but part of 8, of what happens when Subaru does use it like that, and it tends to make things harder for him in the interim that it's done without love, something Al just doesn't have anymore, especially with Priscilla gone.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Without love. Now, he will truly be a following star no longer.
I mean, like, implications for what this means for Al's character is so vast and like thing. I'm gonna have to just read to understand it. There's only so much I can speculate about where Al's gonna go from here, you know, because it's just so huge in what this means for him. In that I can see this going in so many different paths, and all of them are, most of them are just as valid as each other, you know.
Yep.
So all I'll say is I'm very curious to see where his character goes. You know, I could see it going before where I thought maybe he's being set up to be like a kind of Archer fake character of that betrayal aspect,
Right.
but he could also become a staunch ally instead. Or it could be both, you know? Like, so...
Why not both?
Why
Goes
not
and kills
both?
another village phony.
Oh my god. He's like, man, my war crimes were not enough in the past. I need to go kill another village phony.
Yeah. I was gonna say something. I forget what it is. Yeah, I think like the idea of like what Al is going through here is he is not going to be able to pledge himself to somebody else, in my opinion. You know what I mean? Like like at this point, his hopes are gone, I feel like.
Well,
Or
because
unless he changes who he is. You know what I mean?
Al has always operated on the idea that no matter how hopeless or difficult a scenario, there's never not a way out. That he's always found a way to get out of a situation, no matter how many times it takes. But Priscilla's death here is showing him that there are some things that you can't change, a fate that you can't avoid. And he's always been talking about, like, I'm no longer that person. Don't call me Aldebaran.
Yes.
I'm just here for Priscilla. Or like when we saw him on the Gladiator Island back in EX5, that he just was going with the flow, not really caring about anything. Just
it was all a game, like NPCs, you know, no care, apathy. Apathy is the word.
He wasn't going for anything, trying to, like, almost hiding there in a way.
Like just waiting for Subaru almost to arrive is my assumption.
Or something. Not. I don't even know if it's waiting. I think it's just hiding from other circumstances.
Like I shouldn't get involved because if I do, I'll care and then I'll pointlessly work and toil away, kind of thing.
Or he may have been given something from Akidna that he just didn't want to accept and like refuse to agree with or acknowledge, similar to like Roswell's thing to Subaru. He's just like, I'm just going to avoid it. I'm just going to leave and pretend like it doesn't happen. But now it's like shown to him that there are some things that no matter what, you cannot avoid this happening.
Yeah. But I imagine he'll lash out, especially at Subaru. I think he may place a lot of, especially with the expectations he has on Subaru, I think he's going to place blame on Subaru. You know, maybe Priscilla was wrong. You know, you should have thrown yourself off that wall, you know? That's a thing I can imagine.
Yeah. It's one of those things where, as somebody who knows die, talking to somebody else who knows like to die, Subaru's conviction as an adult here probably seems absurd. And it's actually interesting when you think about it because Al doesn't really know what Subaru is like in those scenarios because he never experienced that with adult Subaru. You know what I mean? In the moment where both of their authorities were faking out, he was like, oh, that's strange. What the heck's going on? But then when they reunite, he's probably thinking, oh, yeah, he probably is also doing the same thing that I'm doing, right?
Yeah.
And then it'd be like, bro, you could solve this right now just by killing yourself. Stop this for us, right?
It's almost shocking that he didn't just kill Subaru to trigger it, like, and just see what happens if he did.
Yeah. I think he probably... he probably would have.
I think it's a simultaneous shock of the moment, and I think there's, even though Al has different expectations and maybe, I feel like even if he doesn't mean it, a kind of malicious intent for what he wants for Subaru, I don't think I feel he feels like he has the most companionship and camaraderie with Subaru because of their shared circumstances in a lot of ways. I think to him, like, when he says bro, that's the closest he's in recognition saying, yeah, you're my bro, you know? Like, we're brothers. I can't kill you. I'm asking you to do this for me. Do you know what I mean?
Maybe he doesn't even know how his reset works, just like Roswell back.
Yeah, it could be
that's true.
What's the condition to make it work? Because if, for all Al knows, if he kills Subaru here, like, what does that achieve if he doesn't know the mechanism by how it works?
That's very true.
Yeah, you can't know. It's the same thing with Subaru with Al, right? He doesn't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, Subaru has no idea Al even has a power, right? Like, until this moment.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be a huge shock for both of them. A shock more for Subaru, obviously, because Al already knows.
Yes.
Priscilla being cheeky, being like, Al, you can't keep this a secret forever. You need to let him know. He is so alone and very lonely. Do you see how sad he is? He's sad just like you. Be sad together, please. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Well, I wonder if that was more for Al's benefit than Subaru's. Because, like, she has seen that he does have a good support system around him. Like, no matter how bad things get, Subaru at this point is going to be okay.
Yeah, but Al is not.
It's really one of those things where both of them, you know, have, and this is the difference between them, right? We talked before the strength of, you know, Al is somebody who's able to cast these amazing spells, do all the stuff all by himself, solve any problem by himself, right? Subaru's power, all it does is make him reset, and it could be hours, days back, right? And when it comes down to that, you have to rely on the people around you. Al only thought that he had to use everything in himself to protect one person, and his strength isn't sufficient alone. So now that the person that he relied on is gone, what does he have left? If Subaru had the same thing happen to Amelia, there'd still be stuff left for him.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just the truth.
It'd make the waifu war a little bit easier.
This is an end to the waifu wars.
I mean, if Provincial Rem loved Subaru as much as Original Rem did, I wouldn't put it past her to do something to Amelia. This girl is more serious about things.
Yeah.
And how to get it done.
But I'm really... It saddens me to feel like how this is going to impact all of the people around this story, especially the people Priscilla is closer to.
Like Heinkel and Schultz.
Well, that's a setup on her on purpose, right? Heinkel needs a son, Schultz needs a father. They're going to be okay because they're going to have each other, right?
Well, Heinkel also needs a way to get the blood of the dragon, and Priscilla was his best bet for that.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, Gold and I have already, like, kind of seen the immediate aftermath of this, so I would like your thoughts on what you think is going to happen to the Priscilla camp and in regards to the aftermath of this. Like, what happens next to the rest of them? I
think Heinkel and Schultz are going to stick together. I think Heinkel is gonna feel responsible for Schultz in the way he already does, but to a higher degree, that he needs to protect him, but also not, like be overprotective, like train him, make him stronger, make him so he'll be safe and be able to live his life happily in this world. I think that's the sort of vibe that's going to go on between them. I think that's also a very satisfying way to write that character dynamic.
Yeah.
I think Al is going to be going for a lot of turmoil, and I think he's going to split from the group, as he always does, because he always isolates himself and he's always alone in what he does. And I think that is going to be a consistent thing and going to be a big conflict point between him and Subaru thematically. And it's also going to be a thing of, what do I extrapolate from that? Could it be maybe Subaru is able to get to him? Maybe Al gives up completely. It could... or maybe it's something else. Like, there's possibilities with that. I think when it comes to even the Bariel domain itself, especially when we learn the history of them siding with the Demihumans and Demihuman War, it's likely that those lands will be reimbursed back to the state, and I imagine they'd be granted to someone, maybe even someone we already know, to set up make sure we've still got guards on this part of the border with Wallachia,
Right.
Kind of interested to see how the Bariel domain gets split up in that sense, like the politics of how that'll work. I mean, it could even be, and this is just a theory, that maybe Priscilla has a will and she's left all of her properties to Schultz, and he'll be...
I thought the same thing. I thought the exact same thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
That's why she was trying to establish this rapport between them and make sure that was existing.
Yeah, because...
Do you think there's any chance that they get brought into the Amelia camp, just in general?
No, I don't think so. I think Subaru will try to, but I don't think Heinkel will be willing to do that. Maybe in the future, if they go through some events together, but I think Heinkel's going to be stubborn and take it upon himself in a way. Do you know what I mean?
Well, what's his answer to getting the blood of the dragon, then, that he needs for his wife? If he doesn't join up?
His thing will be... It could be crazy and he goes for the leap situation where he just rebels against the crown to try and obtain it at some point. Or he... I mean, honestly, he could go... He could even go to the Anastasia camp, honestly.
Maybe. I guess you'd want him to be Ralph fiction. He definitely can't go to the...
He is going to refuse to go to the Felt and the...
Yeah, he can't join Crucier Felt. No. It was going to be Anastasia or Amelia if he joins
Amelia.
up.
I feel like Amelia is less likely.
I had thought Amelia was more likely because I felt that Garfield would be the one to bring him in.
I think that's
a fair point. That is a fair point. I just don't know where Heinkel would be at emotionally with that, so I'm curious to see what his answer would be. Maybe it'll even be a delayed thing, like it won't be immediate. Do you know what I mean? He's going to go off, Priscilla's left in my will, Schultz is lord of these lands, I'm going to be his guardian and help him. But then eventually they're like, okay, we're going to align ourselves with Amelia. It won't be like an immediate shift. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I do. Okay, interesting. Well, I wanted to ask you both, because this got brought up in our last discussion. Maybe this was actually discussed off camera as well. On your thoughts of getting the more of the explanation of stars and seeing one get brought down in canon and not just referenced.
I don't know what to feel about it one way or the other because I don't get it per se.
It's complicated because it's such a shocking event, almost seeing it actually happen and play out. Do you know what I mean? I've always understood and known about this thing, but seeing it happen in the story is kind of crazy. The implications of it and the implications of Ceci slaying a star whilst being a stargazer is
also, does it look weird to you?
Yeah. It's very...
It's alien.
It's interesting. I feel like it... maybe it's setting something up for the future in that, you know, like maybe there's a consequence for using the stars in this way. Do you know what I mean? Like Akidna even grasping out to the stars and calling them down, that it's like cursing the world itself to a bad fate, maybe.
Honestly, it's one of those things that authority user most wants to do, I presume.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's one of those. It's a great insult to the Stargazers. I mean, the observers. It's like, do they just? Is that an observer that they just ripped out of the sky just now? Like, I can't. I don't know.
Yeah,
Who
like
knows?
did Ceci just kill one of his bosses? Oh, sorry, boss. You know, but my other cooler boss, he told me I have to do this. Sorry, shing. Also, Ceci's all grown up, my boy.
Yes, it's just that did finally fucking restore him. I don't think that it was fully an observer. I think that it's just the bigger and more important thing to note from it is that the stars here are not in any conceivable way the same as an actual star.
Yes,
That this is just a powerful magical thing in the sky, barely out of reach.
Yeah,
it's a collection of mana. Like it's like
yeah,
it looks like a core of mana.
How in our universe, like stars are like a collection of energy. It's just a collection of a different kind of energy.
Yeah, and a much smaller mass, obviously too.
Yeah.
But
the lights, it exudes light, like brilliant light, as they said, but it's energy more so than.
Do you think it's the final form of spirits? Maybe.
I had considered for a bit on whether this is where the true dragons went, like a different form of evolution.
Yeah.
Because it's mana. Like that mana has evolved into that. Yeah.
But they existed during the time of the slaying of all the dragons. So I don't think so.
It could even be a thing of like maybe the it was a starless night before all of those events with the dragons happened, you know?
No, because people are already named after stars, and also she used El Shario.
But they're named after stars from the real world. There's no reference to these stars having names in the ReZero world.
Akidna uses El Shario 400 years ago to slay dragons.
Right.
Oh, that is true. Yeah.
So then the other thought I had about it is, if bringing down a star is what brings a witch factor or authority into the world, and that is why we had the two weird extra ones, because it had happened earlier around that time frame.
Maybe that's the reason why Hector got his thing, and that's the reason why she's mad at Akidna.
Yeah,
he's mad at Akidna.
Hector would almost be her fault then.
Yes.
Which could have been like the catalyst for why she changed what she was doing and the way she was doing things.
I mean, because Hector also looks like a bit of an older man. He could have had a family or something, and this event caused them to die, you know? Like...
Yeah, melancholic. I mean, I'd be melancholic after that.
Yeah, food for thought, you know?
But he knew her. I don't know. It's a weird scenario all around. I think, like, what stars are at that point, they being tied to authorities makes somewhat sense, because we know that all the Synarch bishops have those names. Well, I guess every person with authority has then a name like that.
I've even just thought of an idea that it would make sense why they go against Ode Laguna so much, because if they're very powerful particles of mana that are outside the influence of the world, it could corrupt or change them in a very significant way, right?
Right. It has, like, bringing down a star in this case has not leveled the playing field of power, but it's shown I honestly don't even know what I'm trying to say here. It's almost changed the game a bit for the strength of world-changing abilities that people have.
Right.
Not just like, I'm so destructive I can blow up a city, but like this is something that, I mean, everyone's going to see it in the night sky now because it's a fucking flat planet.
I mean, they make the point, if Sphinx gets enough mana, you could level the planet with enough of it.
Yes.
It's not that much.
No.
Also, it's like, Al using that spell.
Yes.
Is crazy too, right?
Because his earth magic has always been like a bump in the road, or like a form a little pillar or I throw a single rock. It's very limited.
I now make a sword of earth and blow it up within my target.
Oh,
yeah.
not only that, but we've never even heard the class spell that he used.
Yeah,
this is all is a different thing.
Yeah,
this is
not even
I had thought about that when we were getting the names initially. I'm just like, well, there's like a missing character here.
Yes,
like where's the extra one?
It's the ultimate form of magic. Like we thought that Al was the ironically enough was the ultimate form of magic, but no, that's the only modern ultimate form of magic. But he knows some ancient Akidna spell.
Or it's not even like a proper one. Because if he has that ready, and it doesn't seem like Al has that much mana to him in general.
I mean, the penalty.
So this has to work.
For it.
Yeah, this has to work differently than normal in order for it to function that way. So I wonder if it's like not even a higher level, but if it's almost hacked magic.
Yeah,
It's like the actual natural order of magic has been like not corrupted per se, but like desecrated because he's influenced it in this way.
Yeah, like he's done something that you aren't supposed to be able to do, like by almost someone's looked at the source code and
yes, exactly.
Like when they made the broken dungeon in Bloodborne that spawns 80,000 blood echoes as soon as you walk in the room by making the CUM dungeon.
That's a very good reference. Anyways, I was thinking about that. It's like now that is the case, and a lot of things about like tech jargon and stuff is the case. I'm wondering, because of Akidna's vast knowledge, does she know that she's in a dimension like this? If that makes sense.
She has seen Subaru's memories like in full, or at least the one in the graveyard has.
Yeah.
So she has to know to that degree. Like she put on a schoolgirl outfit.
Yeah, exactly. So at that point, would she be like, "Oh, I'm going to code my reality"?
Oh, she's like, I want to go to the this other place. Almost like she wants to get reverse isekai.
Maybe.
I mean, if you want to know everything, you would kind of have to.
Yeah, you
have to. Like, I want to know everything over here. Yeah.
She becomes a dimension hopping like creature.
I think it's more the opposite of what you're thinking, though, Gold. That she knows so much about the world by having consumed more knowledge than anyone else that she can see like the source code of it and can figure out things about it.
Yeah, I was gonna be like, does she know she's in a story? You know, maybe. Does she care? Like, if you were somebody like Akidna and you knew your story, would you be like, okay, sure? Because it doesn't matter; it's still your life.
I feel like that would be fascinating if I was Akidna. I'd be like, oh, interesting.
That's the Scarlet Witch in Marvel. I believe that she is fully aware that she's in comics alongside Loki and Gwenpool and Deadpool.
Yeah, but at a certain point, you're like, well, what can I do about that?
Yeah.
But maybe that's why that made her curious. She'd be like, "Oh, I'm gonna hack my reality." Yeah.
I think that's why she'd be more interested in what Subaru has to offer. Of like, let's see different, like almost different playthroughs instead of trying to like quick save a boss fight that she would have done with Al.
Exactly.
It's not save scumming. It's going through different routes in a visual novel. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like it's an RPG like Soulsborne boss fight, but you could like quick save and quick load. But instead, Subaru's playing different visual novel routes.
Yeah, and when you really think about it, it makes a lot of sense for desperation, because it's like, please give me the ability to live forever through your memories. Give me the ability to live forever. Let's just play life and see everything life has to offer infinitely. You know what I mean?
I think that also adds meaning to her believing her love can run out and things like that, is because it's almost like a boredom thing, right? She knows the source code, she knows all these deep things, she's gained all of this knowledge, and now she's bored. Like she and Subaru is a infinite potential of excitement and new knowledge and new things you can see and experience, emotions, raw different things, like seeing the different faces of people. That's something that she can't tap into, right?
Right, because she wrote the Tome of Wisdom by being granted that knowledge by her authority. So if her authority goes beyond just making that one specific book, that it lets her just like, there's a very common like old story that a lot of Japanese authors like to reference, which is Laplace's demon. And this is almost a thought experiment where suppose there was a magical demon that was so knowledgeable about all aspects of the universe that they could predict the bouncing and manipulation of all the atoms to the point that they know exactly what's going to happen because they can see the pattern that's going to lead up to it perfectly. It's like Mushoku Tensei references the name, Bunny Girl Senpai directly references the story. It wouldn't shock me if Akidna's authority had given her a ability similar to that.
Yeah, seeing the potentiality of the future.
And until a character like Al or Subaru gets involved that are able to get a glimpse of a future and then go back and adjust, that she could then just see, okay, well, X, Y, and Z are going to happen. So I'm just going to write it all down in a book. And that gave us the Tome of Wisdom.
She could even be the reason why they're there. Or at least she is, it creates a mechanism as to how they can come here, kind of thing.
I think it's possible. If her hacked magic is what was eventually used by someone else to seal Satella, then it's entirely possible that it's the same way that she was able to bring someone into this place.
Well, wouldn't you presume at that point that Pandora is also just as likely?
I don't think it's impossible. If Pandora got to Akidna to have said, you bring someone here, and maybe that's where Al came from, or some other situation. Because if Satella is truly sealed, it is strange that she would have been the one to bring Subaru in.
Yeah.
We've kind of always had that assumption, but she's never fully admitted that.
And we even know in the events of Arc 7 and Arc 8, she can lose him and has a very, very short range of radio of how to be know where he is and be constant observant of him, right? So it's almost as if she's got a very limited area of control in what she can influence and do.
I agree. I think a part of that comes down to the fact that whoever brought Subaru into this world couldn't have been somebody who was sealed. It probably couldn't have been somebody who was dead. You know what I mean? This is my mindset.
Yeah, Akidna can't do anything outside the range of the sanctuary. And by the time when Subaru gets summoned,
it could be a delayed mechanism.
Yeah.
She set this up. She is a contingency. 400 years, this spell will activate, kind of thing.
Yeah, at that point, she literally did everything. But to my knowledge of that, it'd be when or where would that have occurred? You know what I mean? Because he randomly teleports into a city in Lagunica. That has to be something undeliberate or deliberate enough, because either it was fated exactly that he would be there to meet Amelia,
or it was completely random,
or it's completely random. Yeah.
Well, it's the opposite. Roswell knew that Subaru was going to show up then, so he made sure Amelia was there for Subaru to find.
Yeah, that makes sense actually. Yeah,
right, because he sent the assassins after Amelia.
To organize that whole situation. He's responsible for the entire first 4 arcs. They're all Roswell putting everything in order.
Who's shadowed over by Akidna.
But it's the Witch of Greed who wrote those information in the first place.
In the tome,
exactly. Yeah.
So with bringing him here, it also I think is worth remembering that he is connected to Beatrice, even though I don't think that wasn't in her expectation. But it's another aspect of Akidna that Subaru has latched onto. Someone who is proficient and experienced with working with dimensions as well.
Yes.
Also, giving him that makes me think that she wants him to do something with dimensions as well. If that makes sense.
Well, I think I was more meaning that was just a hint.
I know
that it is towards Akidna specifically.
Yes. I'm also thinking that what is it about what she knows that made Subaru the likely candidate to bring in when she already had something like Al? Did she mess up? If Al knows who Beatrice is, knows everything, but it also was a clone of somebody, let's say, then Subaru couldn't have been there first, right? So this, I'm trying to like make sure that we're all kind of agreements that like it'd be weird if somehow Subaru was here beforehand. So he can't be a clone of Subaru because Subaru's soul wasn't there.
Yes.
He can't be Flugel can't be Subaru because of the same reason, right?
Well, if Al is a clone, he's a clone of someone that's maybe 30 years older than Subaru, give or take, based on the references that he makes.
Yeah.
Right. And
like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle one is the kind of biggest giveaway. That's someone who would have been like Subaru's age in the 90s.
Yeah, the only thing is that like when Al always has these moments where he's talking to Amelia, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm just like, is that because you've seen this before? Is this because you've been told this by the Witch of Greed? What's up with him and Ram,
Well, so he knows of Ram, but we haven't fully confirmed that he has like spoken and done stuff with her before because Ram doesn't have memory of that.
Right.
It could be
read the Tome of Wisdom, the same that Roswell did in order to know that he needed Ram.
Mm-hmm. It could even be a thing of, right, that we've talked a lot about the ode and what the soul means. And this is especially relevant because Subaru is becoming more aware of it. Like, he goes to the Hall of Memories to confront Sphinx, and he uses his smell, which is the strongest thing you can connect to memory, to restore himself in the Hall of Memories, right? Him becoming more aware of his soul and what the ode means. I feel like for Al, it's a thing of a lot of these people aren't the same people. Like, it's not a cycle in that way. It's a cycle in that maybe people with similar odes are showing up. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that are there to fulfill the same roles.
Yeah, like the ode of the sage candidate. Because if Al is Flugel, he is a failed sage because he failed at what he was supposed to do, right?
Mm-hmm. Or at least gave up on it. That could be the trigger.
For the
because, like,
one.
we know that before Super showed up, Al was on the Gladiator Island just fighting. He clearly isn't aging in the state that we have him in right now, in any case. It could be that whatever trigger of events lead to Super getting summoned was activated when Al devoted himself to Priscilla specifically.
Because he's deviating from what a sage should be. So then the mechanism that creates or brings another sage candidate in fires, and that's when he's in.
Exactly.
And it makes sense then why there's the setup of all of these characters that either have parallels or similarities to others from 400 years ago. Because they're not those characters, they are just parallels of them.
Yeah, they're there to fulfill the same purpose, the same role,
right?
From whatever the observers have deemed.
Yeah. People kind of resembling.
0101, like numbers, coding, computing, kind of plays into that as well. It's almost like a game is replaying an event that it's coded into the hard software of the game.
Yeah. So there is a lot of like characters that are distinctly unique in this timeline of events. People
like Otto, who doesn't show up in Tome of Wisdom.
And stuff like that, which are just like, okay, if that's the case, then what is the Tome of Wisdom worth? Or what exactly is happening that makes the observers, or I say, the authority, not pick up on something, and also against the observer's perception of things? I'm not sure if that's the case with Otto or whatever.
It may be it's the difference between Flugel's starting point and Subaru's starting point, in where Subaru's is envy and his is, learning wisdom through learning about people and getting close to people, and not about acquiring knowledge per se. And I think that is important because that's how you master authorities and sins, right? And it then adds that element of, it makes sense why Subaru is here, why this is all happening, and why he's such a monumental potential change for the world, and how he affects other authorities and why he's immune to them. Because think of it like this, right? By Otto, the reason Otto doesn't show up in that Tome of Wisdom is because by Subaru's actions, Subaru incidentally saves Otto, right? Otto is fated to die in that cave.
Yes, but it's also that Otto is only like really brought into that cave because of Subaru's actions already. But those actions were only done because of someone else that I don't think appears in the Tome of Wisdom. I don't think Rem is supposed to be in there.
No.
I think there was a prediction of Rom, but Rem is the surprise, which is why Al is like confused by that and gets so mad because it was something that maybe wasn't predicted, and that like
It's
just
faulty.
pisses him off there could be flaws in it that he had not assumed, because it's Rem bringing Subaru the part of the way and then leaving him behind that leads Subaru to meet Otto, which then leads him to work with him later, and then to take him with him when trying to save everyone in Arc 3, which brings him with him to Arc 4.
That also
Like that's all a direct result of Rem's existence.
Yeah, but that also adds emphasis on the importance of Subaru's power, of that these people who, you know, are sidelined even by the world, right, that aren't recognized, are people that are important and can change things and affect people around them. These aren't NPCs. These aren't like people that you could like just understand by the way the code of this universe works, because these are people. They're more than that.
Yeah. I agree. I think like that idea is very clear in Brimstone, in the sense that everybody that the Witch of Greed is affecting sees the characters like NPCs, and even Al kind of has that mindset sometimes with the way that he uses his powers, right?
Yeah.
And because of that, I think we're going to get like a rude awakening where it's going to be like, we talked about how like the Stargazers believe in the world as it is. And then there's the ultimate extreme of that, which is Akidna, who believes in this world as a facsimile, like something fake. And then, like, there is probably Pandora, who tries to oppose the reality that she sees and shape into whatever she wants. And then there's somebody like Subaru who's like, wait, I understand this world can be a bit difficult. I understand that it's slightly like fantasy-like what I remember from my home, but it's also real. You know, it's going to be a nice balance of the two ideas.
Because I think Subaru is also an important showing of breaking that cycle of this is all predetermined fate. Like all of this is fated. It's him. It's almost like a statement. It's like the reason this is fated is because all of you let it be. Any of you could have changed any of this. You don't have the same power that Subaru does, but you have the same agency that he does. It's your
the only one who really embodies that as well, that we can like really see, especially this arc, is Ceci too, who actively defies and chooses to ignore fate. Even if he does follow along with it, it's by his own decisions and actions that he does, not through listening to fate.
It's his own stage, his own story, because everyone is the main character in their own story. It's not a situation of everyone is the character in someone else's story. Everyone is living their life. And Ceci embodies that fully to the most extent. And that's why he respects Subaru, I think, as well, because he understands that he might bring about that change for a lot of people. And that's intriguing to Ceci, because that makes the world more fun for Ceci, does it not?
I think it does.
Yeah, I also think that one last thing about this is that, like, I think that it's a juxtaposition to the people who live, you know, the philosophy of like, oh, we're just living in a simulation, man.
Oh my God,
we're playing a game.
Yeah.
Like, I believe that Akidna or somebody like Al might even believe that somewhat, you know? It's a sort of nihilistic feeling of like, why do anything? You know, I'm just going to do what makes me get the highest score in my mind.
You know, my stars are bad. I don't need to try, you know? Like,
well, that's also just how Roswell acted before Arc 4, too. It's like nothing matters except doing what is expected.
I need to solve the quest,
In reality, Roswell could have changed things. And I think, again, Subaru is just railing again and again. You guys all have the power to change your fate because your fate is in your hands. And this world that has been weighed down by everything being fated, by everything being written in the stars, is in itself a sin. In itself, it's inexcusable because you are all people. You're not video game characters.
Like, Roswell was lord of the domain that Elior Forest was in when it was attacked by Pandora and Regulus.
You're right. He still would have been lord of that dominion by that point. Yep.
And just as he knew that the attack on the Oni village was going to happen and allowed it to and took responsibility for it happening, he allowed that attack on the forest to happen too.
Mm-hmm.
Like at any point there, because he knew that at one point Amelia could be unfrozen and just go and get her. He could have just gone and gotten her.
Yep.
And was actively choosing not to.
I mean,
because he didn't think he had the ability to
effectively,
choose
with the
not
knowledge he had, he could have made it so she never met Geese, and that sounds really sad, but that is what leads to the trigger of them coming there, right? Probably.
Yeah.
So, effectively, Roswell could have intervened in that situation. Any time in this time, Roswell could have changed things. Any time in this time, if anyone had the power, or at least the self-awareness and the wisdom to know they could change things, they would have by this point.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why I think especially a wise person like Otto is important in that too. You know, his fate isn't pre-met or predetermined almost. He's making his own. Whether that ends in the best way possible or not, he's a merchant treading on the path, traveling and figuring out his path, you know?
Otto isn't even like letting himself be bound by like the will of the people around him.
No,
like, he's the only one that pushes back to Subaru and Amelia.
He challenges Subaru. He doesn't follow Subaru blindly, and that's important too, right?
Yeah, it's a huge part of him.
He's his friend, so he challenges him. He's not his friend, so he follows him into the depths of hell. He's like, okay,
yeah, that's what Garfield's for.
Better option, you know. Garfield, you're the tank and also the offense, but I'm the brains in this operation, okay? And I know it.
Well, not to just immediately change course of the conversation, but we have been going for a while with a lot of speculation and stuff, and we should hit on this phase a bit more, and then talk on the double arc as a whole.
Yeah,
I'd feel remiss if I didn't quickly say that we are Studio Heroic Reveries, it seems.
Yeah, I'm glad that was the name we chose. I think that the fact it's been called back to so many times, it almost unknowingly for us at the time, like how important that moment was for the series.
Yep, it's just
awesome.
It's epic foreshadowing.
It is.
Mm-hmm. It's good. What else do we have to hit for this phase in particular? Anything else? Do you want
I mean, we could briefly touch on like the full conclusion with No, the Dragon Husk stuff was last time. Mm-hmm. Sorry, I read these two phases back to back.
I don't.
Yeah, the exact same time.
What?
So the Palladio stuff, that was just a whole joke. Totally not even like anything else associating to it.
Yep.
Did we get the Yugard stuff? That's what I
yes. Okay. Yes. Now this is a thing I've been wanting to talk. Yugard, even though he's a genocider and that's really cringe, he's a really cool character, guys.
He is cool. I like the moment where they're like the Thorn King, the Wise Emperor, and the Sun Princess.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. They changed the subtitles to their name individually.
So cool.
I thought that was a really epic moment. I
love how Yugard reflects both Priscilla and Vincent in the way they view the world, in how much love they have for the people, in that he's so proud that he gets to see children of his children make their mark in the world, you know? Like, it's like, wow, I never thought I'd be able to see this, but to see this makes me proud and happy.
It's the one thing that he had left, you know, unfulfilled. You're talking about like these unexpected, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. What Yugard really wanted was to realize that his union with didn't mean nothing to the world.
Yes.
You know, I think his being able to feel something, he wanted those feelings to be able to reach out into the world. We talked about this last phase, but like, he's not necessarily somebody who wanted to be cruel or unfeeling. It was just that the opportunities seemed lost to him. But now that he realizes that there was something born of that union besides hatred, he takes it proudly.
And he addresses the evils of what he did, like him saying, we must revoke the edict of immediate execution of mole people and wolf people. And he's like, that's what one of mine and Yorna's last wishes to the Emperor. And Yugard, knowing he's on borrowed time and that he will soon fade, and that by extension for Yorna's story, that she wants to end that reincarnation by getting rid of the curse by welcoming those people back in is such a great way to set the course of towards the end of her story, because of what she means in terms of and what Priscilla means and what love means to this story, right?
Yes, that she can finally find peace and just know that she can love the people and isn't going to have to watch everyone that she cares about die before she does again.
Yes.
Speaking of, rip my daughter, I guess.
Yeah, just my daughter's dead, and Yugard being like, "Oh wow, child of my child is gone. This is really sad."
Yeah, that is pretty sad.
It is exactly what it is. It's
Yorna
Yugard
child. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, she has almost certainly done this already. Like,
yes, but,
probably a few times.
But she I don't think she thought it would happen again in this instance. She thought maybe like, this is my last time. I'm getting rid of the reincarnation. I won't die again and see my next child be outlived by me.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is going to be why Tanza will be so important for the story going forward, for her at least, right? As a surrogate daughter.
Yeah.
Or Archaea, too.
Yeah.
As well as Archaea, yes. Speaking of child, how do you two feel about Subaru's method of undoing the regression that he has been stuck with for so long? Like, restoring himself to normal?
I don't know. How do you feel about what?
I actually, I don't know if this is a popular opinion or not. I really like it. I think it feels Sage Candidate vibes to me really well. Of the solution of Olbart ends up, even if Olbart was still the solution, he doesn't ever feel like the right path. Do you know what I mean? Fuck Olbart, but he ends up restoring himself by using his wisdom in the Hall of Memories, using that as a Sage Candidate. It just feels right to me. It feels like at this stage in his story, he's kind of coming into that role more, and for him to restore himself through that just feels right. I don't know if you agree, Connor, but
I agree with the method, but I stand by my earlier statements that doing it so late was a mistake. It should have been done immediately after getting out of the city. I don't think his character truly changed that much over the course of Arc 8 compared to Arc 7.
Mm-hmm.
Not enough to have been keeping up the shtick for so long without any real... Like, I don't think that the resolution of him doing it the way he did was enough of a payoff for how long he was a child.
I think the thing I will push back on is I think it's hard to justify how he accesses the Hall of Memories without him using it on Sphinx in particular.
I don't disagree, but he had already come face to face with Sphinx there, and if it had failed once and he let himself come to understand it, and then he had to bring that forward into the final battle, knowing I have to talk to her after, and then it works after she did everything by becoming Akidna.
Okay.
But it didn't work the first time.
I can see that. That could work. Yeah.
I think it's interesting. I mean, like, everything builds on it. I think this was a good solution. It doesn't feel quite... Because I agree, right? I feel like there's another way you could have done it that made it feel better and still have this moment. Because I feel like this moment has a good payoff thematically to everything going on Arc 6, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's like... You could have devised a less debilitating thing for Subaru to go through to then confront Sphinx like this. You know what I mean?
Yes.
That's why I feel about it.
I do also think in Tepei's mission to make sure Subaru is grounded and isn't cool, I think sometimes he goes a bit too far in debuffing him in some of these arcs.
I agree.
At least recently. I feel like now it's to a certain point where I'm like, okay, it makes sense for these debuffs to be a thing, for this part of the story to be obstacles, right? But if we get really big debuffs that isn't him losing Return by Death in a super climactic moment, I'm gonna be frustrated, I think, in the future.
Mm-hmm. No, I completely agree. So like I'm satisfied with, as I said, the method of it. I just think that the writing around it could have been done better. Like, in the aftermath of it, and I'll discuss this when we talk about the whole thing as a whole. Arc 8 did leave me with a few more complaints than I think 7 did, but the road there I still thoroughly enjoyed.
Yes.
And so
I think so too.
This part of it was, I was just done with him being a kid after so long and just wanted it over with.
Yeah.
I had just wished it had been done earlier.
So yeah, let's talk about Arc 8, right?
Okay, yeah.
Just overall, like in terms
It shouldn't have been an arc. I'll just start off with that. It shouldn't have been an arc.
It's one arc.
L editor mistake. It should not have been an arc.
I feel you, and I also feel like the start of it feels lackluster. Like, you know what I mean, right? Like Arc 8 start feels lackluster enough that you realize very quickly that Arc 8 is actually Arc 7, because no arc would reasonably start like this in any other arc in ReZero.
No.
There's always a denouement first.
And that being the case, I feel like the fight was probably one of the better fights in ReZero, right? In total, all the characters did cool things. Arc 5 also feels like that too, in a way. But I like the structure of this a little bit better, even though it feels kind of the same. If you know what I mean?
Yeah.
As like 5 in a way.
I think both 7 and 8 did a better job of that than 5 did.
Yes.
But 8's final battle in the city didn't feel too different from the battle in the city during 7, where this is
exactly
everyone split up and doing a bunch of cool stuff, and all of our main characters get to have their awesome moments.
Yeah, they do all. You're right. It does feel like, okay, why did we do this twice, right?
Yes. I don't think either of them were bad, but it did lessen the coolness of 8 doing it a second time around.
Right. It did feel like, okay, this is a continuation of what just happened.
I think in terms of stakes going forward, now this is a thing again, like as I mentioned with like the debuff stuff. I think this is my tipping point for how to pay to structures the story going forward with Priscilla's death and what that means, right? Where I think having debuffs that are very easy to conclude within one arc, unless it's something serious like RBD being revoked, I think is my only exception to that. I also think the same for structural things like, you know, the climactic final battle where the enemy has loads of things up their sleeve, but then we've got our stuff up our sleeve. I think we need better stakes than that going forward. I trust Tapei can do that, because I think with how I kind of vibe with the direction he's going with things, I think he understands that very well. I think especially with the way he reverted Subaru here, I think he at least subconsciously recognized, okay, I did this too long. I've got to wrap this up in a quick way so it's not drawn out, right?
I think villain fights from now on have to be a little bit varietous, right?
Yes.
In its nature, because I feel like, as you say, we've had 3 arcs that have ended in a similar way where it's like, okay, these guys get their matchups, and then their matchups, and they feel like they're about to lose, but then somebody else helps them and they win, and then, or like, they remember something and then they finally overcome something, which is fine, right? This is a shonen trope almost.
And that was true for 4 and 6 as well.
Yes.
Yeah. And that being the case, it'd be better if some arcs ended. Like, I'm fine with that existing in the story. I mean, it kind of is the nature of fights in general, right?
Yeah.
But like, I think there has to be some more endings that feel a bit more morose like this, right? Like, I like the very end of this arc, right? But if the arc ended not with Priscilla's death, I would have been like,
it would have hit differently. Yeah.
It would have been significantly less worth it for how long it's been going on.
I think the main thing is, I think Tapei was good to recognize that, and I respect that he's able to say, okay, because I think also the intentional eeriness of this phase, as I was talking about earlier, the description of like, this doesn't feel completely right, that actually being intent with Priscilla's death at least vindicates that for me, because if I'm being honest, boys, if that last chapter wasn't there and I had that eerie feeling in the thing, even if I just had to wait till arc 9, I would be disappointed.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think I think there's two major flaws with Arc 8 for me. One of them only comes in through this final phase specifically. But that is more specific that Beatrice and Roswell didn't get any meaningful interactions or character stuff with Akidna showing up here.
Yeah, it was like the one line off of it, it being put into one of the many loops with just a single line of dialogue. Subaru gets near the end there.
Strange.
It does feel wrong, I will admit.
Yeah. It feels like he was like, if Betty and Roswell start yapping here, I'll have to write 5 more chapters. You know what I mean? It felt like that was on his mind, rather than that being a natural thing for them to do. Or maybe it's like, oh, he can justify being like, oh, well, the chaos of the moment. But it's like, if they don't mention this later, it's going to be like, why wouldn't they?
Yeah, I think this, at least from how I'm trying to understand to Pace's perspective, again, I think it's an aspect of fear for him of overdoing it, because he's mentioned before with Beatrice and Roswell being like, yeah, that's not the real Akidna. And maybe he was fearful that if he focused on that, it would feel inauthentic, which I don't think is the case. But I can imagine that being a fear for him. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I also feel like he's been very careful, and this is just the nature of it, right? He's very careful of giving Subaru too many outs. And what I mean is, Beatrice always has been, since they've made this contract, in a way, like, if he's with Subaru, or if she's with Subaru, Subaru is fine, right?
Yeah.
He constantly has to keep splitting them up to make Subaru at risk.
And, like, not only is he fine physically, he's fine emotionally. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think, like, he's like, if I give Betty too much character development here, it will then be a part of the entire story, because all Subaru will think about, right? It'll be like, oh, what is Betty? She's having this issue. It'll overtake his own emotions, if that makes sense.
Yes.
He'll be like, how dare you do this to Betty? So,
it's going to make it so maybe they ruminate more about it in the next couple chapters, or at least the new chapters of Arc 9, where they kind of, it's like the aftermath, right? Because it's going to be like a build-up to whatever happens in Arc 9, I'm always certain. Because there's no way you could just exit Wallachia, we're back in the kingdom now, right, after this.
Right, yeah.
So I imagine maybe there'll be some rumination there. Maybe it's going to be a thing where it's addressed more later as like a thing of like, if they ever come across Omega, for instance, that's going to be a point of reflection that comes into that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I agree. I think it was brushed over too quickly, but I do understand why Tepe did it.
Well, I think I know for a fact is a funny thing to say. But in arc like 10 or 11 or something, there's going to be the big moment, right? The big moment wherein Beatrice and Roswell finally get to see Omega. Roswell finally completes his dream of killing the dragon or something. And at that point, they now have the main stage. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So maybe that's what he's minding, yeah.
I do think that you are both correct. I think that is just something that he should have considered before bringing Roswell and Beatrice into the battle where she shows up.
Yeah.
I also wonder, this is something that I'm still wondering, if like Felix was supposed to take her place. Because I agree in the sense of like, oh, this is setting up for the identity issues that have been occurring throughout the entire story, right? And that's the reason why she's the main villain of this arc. And I guess arc 7 too. But like, in total, nobody really cares about her. You know what I mean? I know it's the point, but like, she came out of nowhere per se until you realize who she is or like what she is. But like, her being the villain doesn't mean anything to anybody.
Yeah,
it doesn't.
It's not an antagonism of, oh, this character is a compelling antagonist. She's an antagonism of more thematics, right, and the themes of the story.
Yeah.
So I think maybe Tepe purposely, in that sense, had that kind of like thematic villain be in this moment and not later on, so there could be like a more character-driven villain that also has thematic stuff going on, but has that more like antagonism, like, oh, I actually hate you or fuck you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Yes.
I know what you're feeling.
So, and whether that ends up being Akidna herself, the actual one, or Pandora, or whatever it ends up being, I think that's the sort of direction we're going with here, and that's why I'm fine with Sphinx being used as the story device she was.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, thematically, it just resonates with her character. That just makes sense. So, yeah.
Right. The other major flaw I found with 8, and this gets really, really like expounded upon in the last 2 phases of it, is that it's a constant cycle of here's the new problem, heroes overcome it, and then it's immediately, oh, but you didn't actually overcome it.
Yes.
Here's the situation, but worse.
Yes,
And it just kept happening over and over and over again, and it genuinely was exhausting by the end of it.
It was, yeah.
I know what you're saying, but like at the same time, I kind of started to be conditioned by the story to believe that was going to be the case until I was like, okay, when's the arc done? That's when it's going to get finished. You know what I mean?
When it got to the point of here's the walking Megoro palace that the 3 are having to fight, while being a cool moment was just this felt like it almost came out of nowhere of just another problem because the characters would have been able to solve the situation already without just adding more to it over and over again.
Yeah. I think and as I was mentioning before about like how stakes have to change going forward in the story, I think this is Tepei's like sounding board. Okay, this is the time we need to address stakes differently in the story going forward, right?
Because I think the characters are too powerful for there just to be a large physical danger.
Yeah,
exactly.
To ever be a threat again.
And it needs to be now a situation where characters are going to have to be in danger, like actually. And 50-50 on whether they survive. If they survive, that's okay, but I need to feel that. And and in that sense of, I don't necessarily think Arc 7, Arc 8, the same arc, is bad because of that. I think it's just it's basically me last saying this is the last chance for it before it becomes like an actual huge problem for me for the story.
Yeah, well, I've talked about it before, but it's like Arc 7. When I was in Arc 7, I was like levels scaled up in this arc. It feels like that has reached its cap right now. You know what I mean? Where it's like characters can't really get much stronger. I mean, of course, like Pandora exists, we already know that. But like, that being said, what really has to be the conflict is emotional damage. Characters taking physical damage, they can, slice the stars or whatever, right? But then what it means for them to do so is what's important. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like we have now put Garfield and Amelia at the level of a dragon at the scale of Volcanica.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like there's a point where we just can't go bigger than an entire city of immortal warriors of ages past that are all better than everyone we have now.
Yeah.
Having to fight till a stalemate until extra dragons and a threat from 400 years ago that exists in 5 different spots all at the same time and bringing down a star.
Mm-hmm.
And
you can't go bigger than that and have it still be interesting.
And 2 of the strongest people in the world are right here. And,
yes.
So we need conflict between characters is what we need, right? We need
like if we go back to fights like the first one against Wrath, for example, where the situation there is not can we beat her, it's how do we beat her without making everything worse.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think that's where ReZero really shines, because that was also the huge premise of Arc 4. It was always Subaru. The thought was never, can I resolve this one situation? It's how do I resolve every situation?
Yes.
But here it's just one big problem.
Yes, you have to be like, I have to beat this. Also, it's another thing where it's like a good idea of this was like when Capella comes and says, I'm the king of Lagunica, I'm the next dragon priestess or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
The thing is not going to be, oh, Reinhard, kill her. It's, you cannot kill me, because if you do, all the nobles will be mad at you and exile you.
Yes.
Yeah, it's going to invalidate Felt if you just immediately send your knight to assassinate another
political
position.
Opponent. Yeah.
Exactly.
And then we get into I think that's also why it's smart for Tepei to kill off one of the candidates, right?
So Capella can impersonate them later?
Either Capella can impersonate them, or it adds, now it's like, not even just the no one's safe, it's that the story is now moving into Act 2, right? We are finally moving into the... Because, Season 1, like, Arc 1 to Arc 3 was the prologue. Arc 4 to Arc 8 felt like the first act of the story to me, honestly. And now I feel like... Fair. We're gonna progress into this second act of the story where we're gonna learn a bit more about because now we've learned about the overall themes of the world and the characters, and we've met a lot of them. Now we need to learn, how does that intersect going forward? Where do the conflicts come from, and where does that drama come from? Right? Because we have all of these conflicts set up, they just haven't blown yet. Do you know what I mean?
I do, and I think I appreciate Arc 7 and 8 as a whole for what it did for the characters that it did focus on, namely Subaru, Rem to an extent, all of our new characters, and Priscilla and Al as like the major points towards the end. But what it definitely was missing, and something that I did miss pretty much the entire time that these two have been going on, is any real character advancement or character exploration of our primary and like oldest characters, with Rom, original Rem, as much as I still want her back. Roswell, Beatrice, and Amelia.
And there's only been a few times in Arc 7 that there was really any intrigue, in a sense.
Yes, the mystery element in a lot of situations has gone, right?
Right. It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, or even just like the tension that was gone after Todd's death.
Yeah, because Todd's, I think the highlights of the arc has been Todd's stuff for me.
100%.
And I think that's because he's just such a well-written antagonist, and his moments are just high points of tension and conflict, and eventually, near the end of Todd's story, actual emotional conflict too, and thematic conflict for what he means for the story, why he opposes Subaru, why that matters, right?
It's exactly as we say. It's like he's not all powerful, but what he meant in the story that made him a compelling villain. I think that's exactly it, right?
Yeah.
I think, going forward, I'll say that I can't be a begging chooser, because if Arc 7 or Arc 8 didn't happen, I'd always feel a bit of a hole in me. Not being like, okay, what's the rest of the world like, right? This answered it sufficiently. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I think...
I feel satisfied and would like the story to close in on itself a lot more now.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I think...
I got the curiosities answered, I'm like, okay.
Yeah. I think this was the right decision to make. I think, obviously, and this is true for any written medium, it could have been done better in places, right?
I think the whole thing definitely needed to be shorter. There are some entire... we'll call them arcs within the Arc 7 and 8 phase that I think could have just been entirely cut, or at least trimmed down to almost nothing.
Yeah, just trimming down the fat. I think Tapei was so excited with the experiment of the world building that it got caught up a little bit too much into it. I have faith in Tapei, and I think even with the way this was concluded and the way this was written, I have faith that he recognizes that and he knows that he needs to close in. Him saying we're going back to the Kingdom of Lagunica, and also me being, I am happy that there's still going to be like aftermath chapters. I think cutting immediately back to Lagunica, even though it's refocusing the story, is the wrong decision to make after this story has concluded, right? We need to see the aftermath. We need to, because that can then also set up conflict for the future, which could then make these more smaller scale, more psychological character study moments that we love about ReZero, right? We saw something that isn't typically a strength of ReZero was a strength in these two arcs, just how it was in sections of Arc 5, but we need that to now reinforce the main bread and butter.
Yeah, we're here for our main characters, and I think it just needs to. I could really go for another Arc 6 after 7 and 8, personally.
Yeah, hopefully.
And I hope that's the case. I think Tapei is going in the right direction. I think this is also a great learning experience for him as an author too, right? Because he's then able to take the best parts of these arcs and then make it so the weaker parts of the previous arcs with this more tense and thrilling moments get padded and built up with these other cool things too, right? His world building has gotten fucking phenomenal. Let's just get that straight, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So
I think so too. And I think we could all do with a more intimate setting. Let's go back. Let's go back to a closed room together. Let's go back to the sanctuary.
let's go back to Sanctuary for 25 episodes, you know?
Yep. Something like that, I think would really work.
Let's go to the Estrella domain and like deal
Yes,
with
whatever's going on.
against that. Yeah.
I mean, true, right? Like, I think them or even Wilhelm people, something like that. We have to deal with, obviously, Wilhelm's domain. I mean, sorry, Felt's domain.
Yes.
What has been going on. Hopefully get back to that.
What I'll say is this, right? I think Arc 7 and 8, I really enjoyed them, and I think if they weren't here, there would be a hole in the story for me. I think this filled a particular thing I needed from this story. I think if Tapei misuses the themes and the characters and the setup that have been done in these two arcs in the future of the story, and they're kind of forgotten, I will be frustrated.
I think as a whole, 7 to me was a difficult to read as I went, but I loved it in hindsight. And 8, I think, is the opposite, where I loved reading it as I went, but it left more to be desired than I would have liked in hindsight in the end.
Yes.
I don't think as much happened that I was excited to see happen in 8, but the stuff that was there was all good. I just think that it was in the way of things I would have preferred to happen.
Because Arc 7 started off kind of lackluster, but it had a lot of really interesting twists that made me feel like I was stupid, because I was like, how did I not expect this? One, I mean, that was part of it, but it was also like, how could I have expected this? Because it's so out there, and Arc 8, in contrast, was a very straight ride. I wasn't really surprised most of the time. Like, the only thing that was kind of interesting was like, oh yes, this is this thing, or this is the solution to this issue. Oh yes.
Hey, Hallible's here.
Yeah. This is what dragons are, kind of thing. Yeah.
Or this is an emotional resonant moment with like Subaru and Vincent, right? Or this is like a really sad moment at the very end. But like, or like there's character affirming moments, right, where I'm like, I now understand who this character is with a lot of the Vlakians. But other than that, there isn't too many gripping moments that were like super standout. You know what I mean? Even compared to Arc 7, right? Which is interesting, because I think like, because this is shorter, it's easier to say like, I enjoyed this a lot. Arc 7 has a lot of ups and downs.
Yeah.
Like, I enjoyed this a lot. Sorry, I was like, Arc 8's like, I enjoyed this a lot, but it's not really my favorite.
Yes.
And then Arc 7's like, there's some of the most amazing moments in this part, and there's also some parts that bore me to tears. Yeah.
I can agree with that.
I think as a whole, it just, the two of them, which should have been one arc, and the fact that that would be as long as it is, almost proves my point. It's a little too bloated.
Yes.
It has just a little too much in it, a little too almost like self-serving as a combined arc, where we resolve conflicts that didn't exist before the arc, even within like the canon of the story. This is stuff that was almost happened because the arc happened.
Yeah, it's
for
like
a lot of it.
While it's cool that Bellaroy's back and Yugard's back and all these people are back, it's like the idea of really setting up these resurrected people comes to a point where you're like, yes, these are people in history. I'm glad we saw them, but unless this is like, I've said this before, in anime, this probably work a lot better, because at the very least you're just on the ride, right?
Yes.
Because it's written, it's also like we're reading these characters that we know are going to die, obviously, because they're zombies. but also it's like they're just here just because they can be. You know what I mean? They're memories, right?
Yeah, they're people that Tappe doesn't have to worry about doing anything with as well. So like there's a sense of
finality to their existence, and also like a lot of them are drawn upon the past, right? Where it's just like reminders of these characters existed in the world. Even Sphinx, right? It's like, oh, do you remember the fact that Sphinx
did you read EX2 and 3?
Yes, exactly. And it's like, no, I don't, right? Like if you read the main story,
4 and 5 too.
Yeah.
If you only read the main story, you'd be like, who?
Really? Like this whole thing does just make a ton of references to EX1 through 5 the entire way through.
Yeah,
like even Valor Chroma. Like the idea that
Miles.
Also, it's like when you're in this point, it does feel like the moment in the JRPG when you're getting the boss that you know is like the underling, and you're like, why am I don't care about this underling, I'm just gonna beat him up, right? This is how it felt, right? And of course this underling had real stakes and real thematic ties, but it still wasn't substantive enough to have this huge long battle arc. And I know the peril that the Empire was in was very necessary in order to create these conditions to make you feel like the fact that they couldn't save Priscilla makes total sense considering all they were dealing with. There's no like blame you can put on like Subaru could have done more or Al should have done more. It's like, what could they have done? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like they tried everything. So I don't know.
I think Arc 7 and Arc 8, compared to the rest of the arcs that are stronger individual, it is going to be colored by how the rest of the story goes going forward and how it's built upon the stuff that's set up in these arcs. In the sense of, like, all of these characters that we get that are new and introduced here, if they are forgotten about and are sidelined in the future, then I will be frustrated. Because I think that all of the characters here that are set up, they do need to come back in some way. Whether that's all at the same time and immediately, I don't think that's necessary. But I think that, like, the potential of these characters and these arcs being done, they need to inform the future, you know?
I would rather they take a break. These characters take a break in the back, just like the Amelia camped in Arc 7.
Yes.
And it doesn't have to be that soon, right? It can just be like, oh, Arc 11, here's this and that person. Like, here's Halibel again.
It's that kind of moment where, like, oh, time to call in the cavalry. Vincent and the fucking Valachian army shows up to back our boys up, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
And
I think 7 is going to go down like a lot more well regarded than 8 will in the future, because even 7 as a whole works better on its own than 8 works on its own.
Yeah. 7 is better as an individual arc. Arc 8 is one of those things that I will have to read the rest of the story before I get my full feelings on it. And that's true for every arc, right? But for this in particular, I think so.
Yeah, because the only real things of import from Arc 8 are a few lore drops and then the development of Al and Priscilla's demise. The rest of it didn't really change the status quo of the story in almost any significant way. Whereas Arc 7, we dived like really deep into Super's hero complex. We did everything with Rem.
We did his
connection to Satella. We got the Pleiades battalion getting set up, him learning how to use his powers differently.
Speak up. Yeah.
Exactly.
Even though technically it happened this arc, but it really happened technically. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they just said the last piece in this one.
Yeah, he defended her, right? He was like, but in Arc 7, he realized that he cared about her. Yeah.
I think the biggest mistake with these two arcs was actually splitting them. I think Tappei's editor should have refocused him on cutting down the chaff instead of splitting them into two separate things, because that they clearly aren't, right?
Yeah.
I think that is an issue of course, that's Tappei's fault for maybe being a bit too long-winded in certain places, but I do actually think that's an editing failing of someone stepping up and saying, okay, this is just a little bit too much. We can get this done in like 3 paragraphs instead of like 2 phases, you know?
Well, this is the risk when he's going off of his outline, right?
Yes.
Like the editor wouldn't know what he has plans. We wouldn't know like, okay, this needs to be shorter, or like you can't go and spend too long on like the like if he's looking at Tappei writing arc 4, he can be aware of like, okay, you can't spend too long on Garfield against Elsa. Like that has to be done pretty quickly so that you can wrap up your already longest arc. Whereas here he has no idea where, like Tappei doesn't even know necessarily where he's going, just that he has points he has to accomplish in this arc.
These two arcs show the strengths and the weaknesses of discovery writing very well, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a very George R. R. Martin way of writing in this arc, in a sense that feels like if he was more paraphernalia with his like references and stuff like that in this arc, it would feel like George R. R. Martin, where it's like, yes, there's a knight named Yugard Vlakia. He was the Thorn King, but then they came all back around, so like it wasn't like that. But like, you know what I mean? Like these themes that feel, and they aren't necessarily as passive and like thematically related in a sense where it's like it's very actively thematically related. Whereas when George talks about, this or that, it usually has only bearing to the nature of what characters are going through in very mundane ways. You know what I mean?
It's like learning about like the tax system or whatever in this fantasy world. Like I can learn about that in the side like world building book, right?
Right. But George writes that stuff to like make sure that the characters exist within the world and will like reference things that make sense for them to reference.
Yeah.
Where a lot of stuff with this one, and I'm meaning like bigger chunks of it. Like for example, did we really need the carriage ride and then establishing ourselves in a second city just to come back to the first one?
Yeah, no way.
Not at all.
Or like even
planning for that, like being
if they had just gone a couple miles out and like planned and then went back in.
I honestly mean it. They just needed to do the thing with medium, like three things to hit real quick. Halbel's here, or I guess it's like 4. Halbel's here. By the way, Spica is a center archbishop. Do not worry. Third one is Vincent. You got to stop being such a wishy-washy guy. And then 4th, the medium thing, and then you could literally just leave. There's nothing else you have to say there.
Yeah, like if like we get to the end of 7, say if 7 was a little shorter, but we get to the end of 7, they escape the city walls, but like they know that they can't like really just leave because it's just going to cause a bigger problem. And this is where Julius, Anastasia, and Halibel arrive almost with backup for them to be able to support here. And they take charge of the situation, and we get some of the fights that 7 ended with here as they're trying to set up how they're going to handle the situation as a whole. And this is where Vincent is letting them take charge before he has to have his own character realization, stand back up himself. When we get some of the fights we had in 8, not all of them, and we resolve the whole thing there. I'd also cut like 90% of the Demon City just from the story, like just almost.
Oh yeah, the thing. The Demon City thing, I didn't really like too much. I think I liked Yorna, of course, obviously, but a lot of it, except for the gang teleported thing, I mean, it felt kind of messy, right? Like I didn't like the perspectives of what's his face? Yeah, Toretta, but also stupid Stargazer boy.
Oh yeah,
Ublik.
Yeah. Just cut him from the story entirely. Just like honestly, Vincent Stargazer told him this, and so he hates all Stargazers. He didn't need the character.
Oh, but he was in the EX novel, so he has to be here.
You're right.
That's how it works. That's how this arcs work.
I think
I don't. Go ahead, say your thing, but I think we're going to cut off the conversation before we go too negative.
I think that is a result of Tappei always needing to know where the characters are for him. Like he's always, whenever I've seen afterwards of the side content, it's always, I've always wondered what this character is doing at this time, so I wrote it. I think that is a flaw in Tappei always having to know what the characters are up to.
I mean, I didn't say it like. I know I said it derisively, but it's also like very true that's how your brain works as a writer.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. I'm not.
You're like, I introduced this in this world, and they should be around here the same way. Let me develop him more and see if that's good. It's as you said, it's a gardening style of writing where it's like he probably somewhat expected Ublik to feel better to write. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Or like say something more poignant.
I think
That would be like, ooh, that's impactful to the story, but like not really.
I can't fault him too much for it, because I think it was an experiment worth trying. Do you know what I mean? I think Arc 7 and Arc 8, the things they succeed at well, and they get across what they need to.
That's
think
true.
These flaws that we've mentioned, we shouldn't focus too much on them, because at the end of the day,
He does get there.
I think these arcs themselves were an important experience to have in the story, and critique-wise of what could have been better, they happened. And we need to see where the rest of the story goes before I feel like I could be comfortable being more critical of this structural point.
Yeah.
I think largely I enjoyed it, right? Like, though I'm saying like negative points of it, I don't mean as in I disliked it so much that detracted from how much I liked it.
Exactly.
Because there's a lot of it that I really, really liked. So I think, interestingly enough, I think we should probably do a arc ranking, because we can't finish arc 9 yet, right? So we might as well do all eight arcs, right? And just rank them at some point, as well as all the characters.
Yeah.
We can probably just go over quickly. Like, this is serving both as the phase end and as our like conclusion to arc 7 and arc 8 within the podcast.
Yeah, I guess.
Like, I think 1 belongs at the bottom still. I don't think 8 was worse than arc 1.
No, not at all.
No.
I would.
I think 2 is still pretty low down.
Yeah. I don't like arc 2 that much. Yeah.
But I feel 3 and 8 are very similar in my mind here.
Yeah,
I
agree
with that.
100%.
Yeah,
they feel exactly the same. I would say that 3 has, like, I don't necessarily like the payoff of 3 in a sense until the Who's Rem part.
I mean, I'm counting Who's Rem as part of 3 the same way that Priscilla's death is part of 8, even though it's not in the chapters.
Yeah, true. Yeah. Okay, so at that point, I would say that. At that point, I still think 8 would be ahead of 3 then, because I think Priscilla's death means a lot more to the capstone of that scenario. Though I agree, the Rem speech is a huge part of it.
Capstone, but I don't. Priscilla's death is definitely like the big point of 8, obviously. But 3 had not only the From Zero speech and Who's Rem, but it also had all of Betelgeuse, and it had the Amelia breaking up, quote unquote, with Subaru in it.
White Whale moment.
It has so many
White Whale.
It has so many moments.
All of Crush.
You're right.
Important to the story. Priscilla's moment is one of the most important, but
there's not really much else. Yeah.
It's colored by the fact that Arc 3 has more of them and is more impactful. So I would probably put
8
Arc 8 and then 3. Yeah, I think that's fair.
1, 2, 8, 3 so far.
Yep.
Okay.
I probably put 5 next after. I don't know what you guys think.
I think 5 next makes sense.
If we're only talking the novels, then 5 next. Yes.
Yeah.
I think the anime brings up 5 so much.
Oh my god, yeah. Season 3 and do you know what? In all our criticisms that we have levied against Arc 7 and Arc 8, don't forget that we have sung the praises of these arcs for all these past couple podcasts.
Oh yeah, I mean 7 and 8 made us like introduce 50 new characters, and at least 30 of them are like favorites now.
Yeah.
Like Medium, Todd, Vincent. I'm going to be remembering these 3 for so long. I adore these characters.
I'm never going to forget these characters. And this is the thing. I think these arcs lend themselves to an anime format perfectly. I think if produced well, these could be like the same with season 3 is for me with Arc 5. I think that will elevate them. Do you know what I mean?
I think it will elevate 8. I think 7 has a lot of benefit from being
a novel
in Subaru's mind the whole time.
Yeah.
That animating that's going to be a similar struggle to animating 6.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so Arc 5 next. I think that makes sense because, as you said, like the novel Arc 5 versus season 3 Arc 5.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're on to 4, 7, and 6, right? Those are the last one.
Yeah,
4, 6, and 7.
Okay,
this is more difficult.
Let's do this one by one. Okay.
Yep.
This is a little differ.
I think 7 had enough had more detractions in it than 4 did, with at least as the web novel. Being the light novel might actually change this for both of them.
That's
Right.
true.
But the web novel for 7 had the issues like we spent an entire chapter recapping something that could have been 2 sentences.
Yeah. When you read the Arc 4 web novel, you forget how much meaningless junk is in Arc 4. Like, there is so much moments where it's like, oh, I'm the Sigma. You have to take this portal here. You have to go here to do this. You have to, there's like a million things with the Ryuzus. There's a million things with like the order and structure of the way in which a lot of things are kind of drawn out. Like, sure, they're interesting, right? But some of the loops are kind of pointless in that.
Or also does have the benefit already of going into light novels and anime that we've seen and or read too.
Yes,
exactly.
That did take care of a lot of its flaws, and 7 was not nearly as changed as 4 was in the final version.
Yeah. I will say that I think that Arc 4 is very important. I can't ever forget it, really, in a sense. Not only just in general, but like it is so amazing. It is the moment in which the story truly clicked for me. It's hard to put low. So I'm gonna think for me, I know a lot of people really love Arc 6, right?
Yeah.
But I'm gonna say something very controversial, which is Arc 6 is after Arc 5 for me. And then probably 7, and then probably 4.
Okay.
I'll let you guys do your things before I explain why.
I think 7. I think my issues with 6 were typically due to the translation quality for a lot of the chapters, rather than the actual content of them. And like the payoffs, though, at the end of 4 and 6 were more than what the payoff of 7 had as a whole.
Well, I will say that the payoff of 6 is the arc, right? Whereas, sure, there's a lot of like really like psychological horror moments in Arc 6 that I really liked.
There's that, but the benefit of 6 to me is giving us the chance for Subaru to see himself through his own eyes for the first time. And that like was always that even during the horror parts, him seeing like the amazing version of himself that has existed so far was one of the big highlights for me the whole time.
Sure, I like it a lot. I think there's a lot of issue with Shala and you're right, it might be the translation quality. A lot of issues with a lot of the moments where, like the death loops and stuff like that were going on that felt a little bit whatever. I think the gluttonies, while like I love Louis and stuff like that, and there's a lot of like thematic resonance with them, I don't think that their fights were particularly that I mean, I love Ram kicking ass, but other than that, also think, Reed's kind of annoying.
He is. I think Reed is the low part of 6 for me as a whole, but I only have his one low part. I think my final ranking probably goes 7, 4, 6 here, which is probably the normie one for the fandom. But 7 and 4 are basically dead tied to me. Like if you remove Tarita from 7, I think it goes above 4.
Oh yeah, that's true. I forgot about that. The issue is, right, there is a lot of moments that are like huge detractors where like even if you adapted to an anime, I feel like I'd still be like, why are we doing this, right?
Why are we spending an episode on these characters?
But like 4, it just grips you and it's like, here we are, why you're going. I'm showing you why we're going through this, right?
Or it can also be exhaustive in the first half of just it. There's no solution. There's no hope. Everything ends in failure and getting worse and getting worse.
Because what he learns in the latter half is so satisfying because of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, sure, you see every possibility that everything's so messed up in 4, and you're just like, as an audience member, you're like, what does he even do, right? Like, I thought he was making progress, but he isn't. I thought he was making progress, but he isn't. I think that's the core of the story almost in a lot of ways, like thematically.
Mm-hmm. I would rank it, and this is only for the web novel before people get frustrated frustrated at me in the comments, we can discuss this a bit further. Like, tell us what you guys think in the comments below about this sort of ranking and stuff. But if I'm talking just about the web novel,
I took it as the arcs as we have them. Like 4 has the benefit of already being edited into English as the light novels and the anime.
Yeah.
It's like a lot of its flaws have already been edited.
I can't separate Arc 4 anime because I love all the voice acting way it's kind of cut, because there's not too much cut from Arc 4 anime that I think is necessary or like detracts from the experience. Rather, it kind of streamlines
it's like 2 scenes.
It's 2 scenes that are missing. The thing for me is, I'll say it like this, okay? When it comes to just the web novel, and this is prominent in my mind because Arc 4 was the introduction to the web novel for me. It was a very tough read at points. And that's not just because of different translations and such like that. Arc 4 suffers from bloat in a more difficult way than Arc 7 and Arc 8 does for me, because it's not like plot bloat, it's dialogue.
Conversation. Yeah. Everybody has a conversation that's a mile long in every single scene that they have a dialogue with somebody. Like, people will just talk back and forth forever.
It's so interesting. I find super long conversations so much easier to read than giant gaps without them.
They're entertaining, don't get me wrong, right?
Yes.
And I think the narration, if I have to choose between long dialogue, long thing, but the thing is, there was long dialogue and then long
non-narration. Exactly. That's exactly it. Because the thing is, I didn't mind having the lots of dialogue, but when you include that with the behemoth of narration in the Arc 4 web novel, I would have to rank it as 4, 7, and 6 for web novel. Now, if we're talking like novel, like completed form arcs, I would probably put 7, 4, 6 as my last 3.
6 being your highest ranked.
I think 6, whilst having... what I'll say about 4 and 7 is I think 4 and 7 are more consistently good all the time than 6 is, but 6's height has not yet been reached for me in the series again. And I think the strength of that height resonates so much for me that it just stays there. Do you know what I mean?
Well,
I do. I think my highest point is still Arc 3, as it's like a highest of points, but I totally get what you mean.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the things with Arc 6 for me, and just the truth of it, is that it doesn't resonate with me as concretely yet, and it's something that I have to kind of wrestle with, right? And I don't know if I just haven't reflected on it too hard, or like what it means exactly for the character of Subaru. But it's one of those things where, like, I feel like Arc 7, you're still dealing with like so much aftermath of it, where, like, okay, here's the truth, right? Arc 6 happens and things still get worse for him, right? In 7. And I think that the way that he kind of approaches it in 7 and 8 kind of gives me a feeling of, okay, now we're finally at the realization, or some sort of realization, right?
I think that's more of a flaw of 8, though, that its resolution is getting him back to where the audience thought he was at the end of 6.
Yeah. I know.
The reason I am not as bothered by that is because when I have the context now of 7 and 8, 6 felt to me like, whilst his answer wasn't entirely incorrect, it was still not the fully realized correct answer. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I do. I think it's that 7's character arc for Subaru is something that came about as a result of like Rem waking up and then the whole hero, like you're not a hero.
How that
but
would
that
interact.
feels almost resolved by the end of 7, whereas 8 kind of back-treaded his need to like see and understand himself in the same way that 6 ended. And I think that's a flaw of 8 rather than a flaw of 7.
Because 7 has a lot of like, you're right, like the Pleiades battalion moment and stuff like that, and him coming over, like
and accepting Satella.
Yes, accepting Satella on the Gladiator Island and stuff like that was one of my favorite moments in the series. Like, it also means a lot, especially seeing the Amelia camp come back at the end of 7 was so satisfying.
Yes.
Because, or like the reuniting with Beatrice and stuff like that. it felt like, oh, he's like Subaru is finally whole again. And then I was like, and then he's going to transform into his full, adult self, right?
Yeah, which he should have.
Should have, right? And then he's back. He's leading the army, right? Didn't happen that way, but that doesn't detract from Arc 7. All the themes with like Todd and stuff like that, and
yes,
everything with his gripes with, Vlakia. It felt so personal because it's already so worn down. And when I realized that, I was like, oh, this feels so organic. And it was such a refreshing take because I remember Arc 6 ended and people were like, Super's changed forever, right? And I was like, yeah, I believe that somewhat, but he still has some growing to do, right? Like, main character doesn't stop growing from this point. And then I realized how human he felt when in Arc 7, he was distraught. He was brought low again. Like, it was so genius to me that Teppei still found a way to organically make him be lower and regress somewhat, even after such a amazing realization. You know what I mean? It feels natural and human.
Yes.
In 7, I'll say it felt natural.
In 7, yes.
I think the benefit of that is it feels very and this is putting my own lived experience into this, right? I think what makes it feel so real for me in particular is that there are moments in life where it's not a straight vertical line to bettering yourself or changing yourself, right? And especially when it comes to mental health, there are just points where you regress. And those elements can even though in the moment they hurt, in the long term can make you stronger because it's a point of reinforcement of, okay, I need to get back up. I need to do better. Do you know what I mean? And I think 7 encapsulates that feeling so fucking well.
Yeah. I also think that it has such a vivid and very unusual theme, which I think is like identity and also like gender.
Yes.
As well, which is such a strange thing for like a male isekai focused light novel to really cover so entirely. And politics as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like all three of those together makes me be like, wow, the world really is that vast in this story. And Teppei is really a writer who can think that deeply about, things like that. And the themes in Arc 7 play throughout that really, really well.
Yeah. You're speaking the truth.
Yeah.
Hmm.
That's why I have it second highest instead of,
I think discussing that now has really made me refocus and think about it in terms of that height for 6 is really, really good. 7 is consistently really, really good. And all of the things it plays with just are done so well in a lot of cases, in my opinion. So it might actually be a tie for me between those two. And then 4 as a completed may go to the top. But this has been quite a long podcast, and I think we're getting a bit too long-winded here, so...
but here we come at the end of our journey, really. Soon caught up to the latest arc of ReZero.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a long, long run. Some of us longer than others. But really, we thank you from the bottom of our hearts for joining us, the people who have listened to every single one of our podcasts up to this point. We'll be doing more for Arc 9, and we're really glad that you listen to us. And yeah, we love the story a whole bunch.
Right. Looks like we planned that we'll have 2 Arc 9 videos in the exact same vein that we've had the Arc 7 and 8 ones.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll probably be doing something different for like newer chapter releases, maybe like shorter videos or shorts or something. We'll figure out the way to handle it.
Yeah.
Like side stories.
But the format will probably be different in that case. Yeah. But apart from that, thank you everyone for watching up until this point in the podcast. We really, really appreciate it. And please tell us what you think in the comments. I love reading the comments. I love hearing what you guys think. Let us hear your opinions on this stuff because it helps inform each other about things and maybe even, not change our perspectives, but influence them. What do you guys think?
But until next time, this has been the ReZero podcast, and Arc 7, Arc 8 are finished, and we are ready to move on to 9, which is crazy that you two were on 6 when we started this, but we will get to that next time. get excited.
Yeah! Bye-bye, everyone!
Bye.
Bye.